All right, guys, welcome back to day 2 of Advanced Nitrox Decompression Procedures with a Heliotrox additive. Last night we covered a lot of stuff, so hopefully your brains weren't spinning too terribly much. Anybody have any kind of thoughts from last night's session that we had? No thoughts? It was clear as crystal clear, and everybody's awesome. Don't everybody speak up at once. It's all good. All right. Well, we're going to step back into it. Just a quick recap. Last night, we talked about a lot of stuff. Overall, we started with a general introduction. From there, we kind of discussed the motivation. And that's one of the things I want you guys, as we move through this process, always kind of keep in mind, what is your end goal? What's the journey look like for you guys? Where are you trying to get with this? What do you want to see, right? Whenever I used to teach open water classes years ago, I'd always ask my students, what do you want to see? What do you want to do in diving? They're like, well, I want to go down and see fish. I'm like, okay, well, I need a little bit more information than fish, because that's a pretty big ask. You like big fish, little fish, small fish, red fish, green fish. What are you looking for, right? I need to know more than just fish. You know, me, myself, and I really enjoy the really large life, but I also really enjoy the small life as well. So start thinking about that. One of the things that I will tell you, I enjoy deep wrecks. There's a really cool wreck off the coast of Boca called the Hydro Atlantic, and it's pretty well known and pretty well documented as well. So there's lots of videos out there, from dumb people doing it to smart people doing it. But the penetration from the aft into the engine room is a really cool dive. And it's definitely a big kid dive, and it's definitely a class, 2 classes past this, but it's a really fun dive. You reel into it, and you go down literally 4 decks, up another deck, and then down 2 decks. And it's pretty cool. And there's a couple turns you make as you go through this process. So it's a cool exploration. And as you can imagine, the amount of danger in that definitely increases. So training is definitely to your advantage. But as you guys go through, kind of keep that end goal in mind. And my goal with this is to make it fun, so that you guys want to do this more. I would hate like hell to, be that mean person. And, well, I don't want to tech dive because Benjamin was a jerk to me. So I'll try not to be too much of a jerk to everybody, but Randy Beckman, I'll just be a jerk to him all day long. There we go. And Texas Randy as well. So there you go. There we go. I'll pick on those 2, but everybody else, I'll be nice to you guys. So think about this. You got to go through that. Other things we kind of talked about is kind of the defining pressure concepts and what those look like. So we understand that we're dealing with atmospheric pressure, hydrostatic pressure, and an absolute pressure. And as we do our math calculations, I can tell you that if you have a good understanding of that, it makes some of the math calculations less problematic. While the algebra is the algebra, the number one thing I see people miss is the difference between atmospheric pressure and hydrostatic pressure, and combining that into an absolute. So if you have a good understanding of that, it definitely helps alleviate some of the continuous math problems as well. We talked about the laws. There's a lot of laws in this, and while you don't have to memorize those and cue card them up, it's definitely not a bad idea to have a good understanding of the laws. In this, as you kind of go through this, 2 of the laws that are really going to impact you the most are going to be Boyle's law or Marriott's law. If you want to be really cool, you call it Boyle-Marriott. People think you're extra smart, right? And Henry's law. Those 2 laws, if nothing else, those are going to be Dalton's law is easy. It's the law of the equal sign. But if you can remember the idea that what's going on with Boyle-Marriott, you'll understand and have a better understanding of what's going on when you're trying to breathe gas at depth, right? When it comes to partial pressures and how much gas you have. And while there are some latitudes to how much partial pressure of a specific gas we can breathe, and people have definitely pushed those limits quite a bit over the years, there's very little latitude to not having any gas at depth. I have yet to meet anybody that's been able to beat that physics problem of no gas at depth. So understanding that in gas is definitely key. And then the other part of understanding Henry's law and how gas absorbs into a liquid, definitely key things, right? We talked about temperatures as well. The other thing it was interesting. I noticed in the auto notes, and I'll be the first to admit those were AI notes, and I think they're freaking awesome. Is that we talked a lot about safety, and so as you go through this, the biggest, if I couldn't get anything else through to you, period, being safe and being willing to walk away from a dive is a skill. It really is, and I know a lot of tech divers out there that, unfortunately, their skill is this much, but their ego is this much. And the problem is it's I always think back to kind of Top Gun. Your ass is writing checks, your body can't cash, right? And so not being that guy that's overly confident in their abilities and always asking the question, what if? What do I need to learn? What else can I learn? What else is there out there? I know for me, I've got all the cool merit badges the agencies can give out, and I love the status when I go hang out with my buddies, because they know how many merit badges we all know each other's merit badges, right? We check each other out. It's like that in my community, but I'm always looking, what can I do more? What's next? What can I understand and have a better understanding of? So I'm always constantly studying and looking for the next thing. I always figure every time you get one of those merit badges, it's one more click that there's something else new to learn. I've learned this, now let's learn something more. What's next? What's more? So always have that hunger for thirst and knowledge, and keep the ego low, and the intense curiosity, is that show would say, be intensely curious. It asks lots of questions. It never hurts. If you get somebody that doesn't want to answer questions, it always gets scary with me. Team diving is part of that safety, as well as keeping that 3-0 shit rule is, I can't be to tell you how important that kind of stuff is. As we got to go through this, making sure you before your dive that you're mentally awake, right? It's kind of like the Boy Scout out, physically prepared, mentally awake, right? So make sure as you get ready that you prepare yourself for these. As we start moving into this, we're still in the first steps of tech, right? This is the class that teaches you to break that terrifying 3-letter word that everybody hears in open water. They're like, do not do this. Well, we're suddenly saying, oh no, it's okay to do that. We're going to teach you how to do that. We teach open water students, don't break the NDL or you'll die, right? And suddenly now we're taking to that next level. But having that mental preparation of that is definitely key, and understanding what you're getting ready to do. We dug into gradient factors again, and gradient factors are directly tied to the algorithm and the algorithm is a way of calculating how much gas is entering into the tissue compartments and when they become maxed value, and what happens when the ambient pressure around the tissue compartment is either increased or decreased. So it's just telling us that I can put, let's see, there we go, get right in front of the camera. I got to figure out where my camera's at. How much tea can I put in my little plastic cup? That's basically what it's trying to tell you. Just think of your body as having 16 of these plastic cups, and they all fill tea at a different rate. And the challenge you get is, as you go deeper, it takes more tea to fill it, right? Or as you come up, it takes less tea to fill it. So it's an algorithm that determines how much gas is going into each one of these compartments or each one of these teacups, right? And what happens is, I start to come up, gas is going to have to come out. And it gives you an idea how fast that's gas is going to come out based upon the ascent rate and the time at each of your Deco stops. And so it does this mathematical formula. So what the gradient factor is groovy on, and I just absolutely love this is an extra step. And we say, okay, the engine in my sports car will rev to 7,000 RPM, but where I'm smart, I realize that if I rev my engine to 7,000 RPMs all the time, I'm going to blow it up. And I realize that if I rev that to 8,000 RPMs, I'm guaranteed to blow it up. So that's what the M value basically says is, okay, here's 100%. Go to 100%, you're probably going to blow it up. That's bad, right? So let's put a governor on that, and let's slow this down. Let's reduce the speed to which that gas is going in or coming out of tissue and out of tissue into solution, and it puts a governor on it. So the GF low portion of that governance says that when I get to 50% full, I get to a 50% M value of oversaturation, it's going to let gas out. So it's the depth of my first stop. As I'm coming up, the gas is getting bigger. It's coming out of tissue. And when I get to 50%, it says, oh, stop. I'm there. You're there, dude. And it's the amount of gas coming out of solution because of its super saturation, right? Then it builds an algorithmic path from GF low to GF high. And your GF high is the depth of your last stop. It's the the big white wizard saying, you shall not pass. This is it. You can't come past this level until you accomplish this goal, until you have this much gas out of your system and you're safe. Now, there's a really cool thing that now here's where we start to get into the new stuff. There's a really groovy thing on your dive watch, on your Perdix computer or your Garmin. I use both. I use the Mark III, I use the X30 and the X50, and I also use the Perdix 2, which now I find out there's a Perdix 3 that I'm gonna have to get because I can't have the older model. I'm too bougie. Just kidding. I'll probably dive the Perdix 2 for quite a while because we have history. But it has this really groovy thing called GF99. Has anybody played with or seen their GF99 yet?
No.
If you haven't played with GF99 and added it to the home screen of your Perdix, I am going to tell you right now, you are missing out. That's one of the things as we get ready to dive, we're going to go through and take a look at your computers. Make sure that you're diving salt, which is the number one thing I see more on more Perdixes that come through that, hey, can you set up my Perdix? Sure. And I'll see it on EN 1389 or whatever that number is for brackish water. So we'll make sure it's on salt, but we'll also check the gradient factor. And then we'll look at your home screen setup from the OC Tech. And we'll make sure that there's some cool key information that's really awesome. It's right there. The first one is GF99. So GF99 is the easiest way to think about this. And while this isn't correct, and I like to always preface this, it's a great mental visualization. GF99 is the speed to which gas is coming out of solution into your bloodstream and the size of those bubbles. That's the easiest way to think about it, right? What it is as you're descending and as you're at the bottom, you'll see it'll say on gassing. What that means is there's gas going out of the bloodstream into the tissue compartments. Your nitrogen loading, right? That's your magical term for the day, nitrogen loading. It sounds cool to say, right? What did you do today? I went down and I did some nitrogen loading, right? So it'll say on gassing, and that's what's happening. As you begin your ascent, obviously the partial pressure of the gas in the bloodstream is different than the partial pressure in the tissue compartment, and that gas now needs to come out. GF99 will measure the rate at which that gas is diffusing from the tissue compartment. The way I like to think about it is that's the size of the bubbles in my bloodstream. And it gives me a better visualization. And I can tell you there's no book or anybody else out there that will say that. That's a pure Benjamin idea. But I have to give myself visualizations that put a finer point on things that make it easier for me. I like things, keep it simple, stupid. So as I look at my GF99, I start coming up and I'll say it'll be 1%, and then it'll be 2%, 3%, as it goes up. Now, there's absolutely limits on this, and we obviously do not want big bubbles in our bloodstream, right? Big bubbles, bad. Simple enough? Okay, so as I go through this, we in our little tech diving community, we put some general rules of thumbs on a lot of things, and one of our general rules of thumbs that we like to use is we never allow our GF99 to get more than 50% of our GF low that we've set in the dive computer. So if I've set my GF low in my dive computer on my settings to my conservativeness to 50%, I want to try and keep my GF99 below 25%. And that's just a good rule of thumb that'll help keep you safe as you start to ascend. So I started sitting in the water column.
Repeat that, please.
Absolutely. So I keep as I watch the GF99 on my dive computer, the rule of thumb is to never allow the GF99 to travel above 50% of what I've set my GF low to be. Does that make sense? So your GF low is again that setting in the dive computer when we set up for conservativeness. That's the governing factor. GF low is the depth of your first stop, and we typically set that to 50%. Anywhere from 45 to 55% is very typical. I like the middle number of 50%. and I haven't seen a reason why not to use 50% yet. So that being my hard fast setting of 50% is my GF low. As I'm ascending in the water column, I won't let GF 99 rise above 25%. Anything above 25%, I know those levels are getting unmanageable. And there's an easy way to stop that. Super easy. Randy, how do you think I might make that number go lower on my GF 99 if I'm rising in the water column?
Which Randy?
Randy L. LeBoy.
Stop rising or go down a little.
Ding, ding, ding. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? If I'm rising too fast in the water column and those bubbles are getting bigger, easy enough. I can stop. I can say, all right, I'm there, right? It's all good. And so as you start rising in the water column, it typically it'll in this class, it'll be harder for you to get to that GF point where you're at 25% or more, but it's absolutely possible. We do it long enough and you rise fast enough, you're going to see that number start to rise. It's going to get to 12 and 14 and 16 and 20. It can happen, right? So we keep an eye on that on our ascent because we realize that if I go slow enough, the gas is off-gassing comfortably, and it's causing a lower amount of tension on my body. And that's
Ben, if you go back down, like Randy said, you have to stay there longer.
All you have to do is just wait. If you wait a little bit, what you'll see is that number will start to slow down and it'll start to decrease. If you get it to 26% and you're at 70 feet, good number, right? And you say, oh crap, it's a 26%, stop right there. Just don't ascend anymore and give yourself 3 or 4 minutes right there. What you'll see is that number will go from 26 to 25 to 24 to 23 to 20. It'll absolutely decrease. It has to, because what's going to happen is your body will come into equilibrium with the depth in the water column that you're at that point. It has to. And because what that number is telling you is that you're ascending and that the partial pressure of the gas in your bloodstream that you're breathing is different than the partial pressure in your tissue compartments. And your body wants to be in equilibrium. So they're going to try and equalize at some point. And so the goal of that computer is to either be at zero on gassing or saturated. That's its goal. That's where it's trying to get to. Right now, as we all sit here, our bodies are saturated to the ambient pressure. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So if we're in the water column coming up and that magic number gets to 26, just like Randy LeBoy said, we can stop or we can go down a little bit and we can add a little bit more pressure, and that will slow the amount of gas coming out of tissue into solution. And as I say, just remember, tissue is our tissue compartments, solution is our blood, right? We're trying to keep the bubbles. And as I said yesterday, the number one goal of this course is how do we manage the size of the bubbles and the off-gassing of that nitrogen in our system. That's really everything. If we weren't breathing nitrogen at all and we didn't need nitrogen in the system and that wasn't a problem, diving would be significantly easier, right? So that's what we're doing. GF99 is this beautiful thing. I keep it on the home screen of both my computers and I watch it pretty closely as I'm ascending. And so as we watch that, we keep it to that 50% or 25% or less, which is 50% of our GF low. And if you want to go to a higher GF, you can certainly do that. It's just going to put more tension on your body. And this is one of the things, be kind to yourself, be nice, and let's keep that tension low as we go through this. So that's what GF99 does, is it gives you a representation about this, about what the size of the bubbles in your bloodstream are. We want to keep those things small. Make sense? Mm-hmm. There's a second number on there that I really like as well. I think these are the two most underrated and underused portions of the Perdix and the Peregrine, or not the Peregrine, the Garmin series. There's another one called SURGF, SURGF. And what that is that's your surface gradient factor. And what that means to you is that's a representation. If I were to surface right now, what would my gradient factor be? So the thing is if we set our computer that our GF high is 80%, when our SURGF gets to 80%, we are in Deco. That means our body is saturated to the point that we're above our safety margin. And that's fine. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that if that's our intent. It's bad if you're a recreational diver. It's good if you're a technical diver, right? That's what we're trying to do. We want to stay long enough. We want to see those big GF numbers. We want to see those big Deco numbers show up. We want to be able to tell our buddies, I was on Deco for 2.5 hours, man. I fought off 6 great white sharks, 3 nurse sharks, and a hammerhead with my fists. I got into boxing. It was awesome, right? So that's what every diver wants. They want those big stories. We want to earn some cool dive stories. So that's the goal. So SurGF gives you a representation of how close or where you're at in the Deco profile. If I were to surface right now, this is amazing. Here's a great example of how I used it once. So I had a student that we had hit 81% surface GF. Now, remember, a lot of times on recreational dives, I'll use an 85% for my GF high. In this particular case, I'd used 80% for just a little extra conservativeness. And I was working with this diver, and he went into a full panic attack. And I'm telling you what, if I had been about 500 pounds more, maybe I could have held him down. But I had a hold of him, hold of his thing. I was dumped all my weight, or all my gas, and I was trying to hold him down. And I watched. I looked over at my computer, and yes, we were at Deco, but we were at 81%. We were 1% over the limit of what I'd set to where I'd go into Deco. So we were ascending. I finally got him to slow down and stop at the safety stop for a minute or two, and then we bolted like he busted the surface like he was a Triton missile. Now the cool thing is, if this had been 130%, 140%, and I couldn't have held him down, I would have had to let him go, because I would have known at 130%. It's not a matter of if I was going to get to DCS. It was a matter of I was going to get DCS, and could I get to a chamber fast enough? But I had a representation, and so at 81%, I wasn't happy about it, but I also had a representation and knowing of, okay, I'm still well within the safety margin. I can still get him to the surface. Our dive day's done, absolutely. That's not even a question, but I know that I'm not going to get bent. Here's the second story. I was doing a dive with a friend of mine. I was teaching him tech, and he had an uncontrolled inflation in his X-Deep side mount BC. It was a cold water dive. We'd been diving for about 140 feet for 25 or 30 minutes. And I saw him floating away, and he just went into panic. I swam up to him, grabbed his hand, and I was trying to and drug him down. At one point, I tapped him in the glass, and I yelled, "Kick, goddammit, kick." And I'm screaming through the regulator. Was able to drag him to a rock at about 110 feet, and it made him lizard around this rock, right? He was like a spider monkey on this rock, and I was laying on top of him, and I was able to get his inflator disconnected, get his wing to dump, and get everything fixed at this point. But as I was heading up to go grab him, I looked at my SurGF, and I was at 190% of surface gradient. So it wasn't a matter of if I was going to get bent. It wasn't a matter of if he was going to get bent. I knew that if both of us continued to surface and I didn't stop this, guaranteed 7 days a week, twice on Sunday, we both would have had the bends. We were probably, I don't know, probably half a mile, maybe something between a quarter mile and a half mile from the entry point at the docks. And I had to figure out, could I swam that far in the 10 minutes it was going to take before we started becoming symptomatic? Could I have swam that? Maybe, maybe not. I don't think I could have. Could I have gotten to the truck fast enough to get the O bottles? Could I have gotten us both on O quickly enough and had my wife drive us to the hospital, which was 25 minutes away? These are all things that are going through my head. But the cool thing is I had my SurGF, and I could see that. I knew that this was going to problem. And there was no choice whether we were coming up or not. The choice was only, how do I fix this and get us down and save us? But it gave me that ability to see what are the consequences of heading up right now. Where am I at in my Deco profile? How deeply into this Deco profile am I? And the SurGF gives you that information. You can say, okay, well, my surface GF is 81%. I'm still close within the recreational limits. I'm probably a little bit over, but I've still got a 19% safety margin. Cool, right? I've got a little confidence. Oh crap, I'm at 195% of SurGF. This is the oh crap. I have to figure shit out here. I don't have the choice of heading up. So it's a really great feature that is just not used nearly enough. It gives you that clearer picture, predictive picture, if you will, of here's what's happening to my body. Here's where I'm at in my Deco profile. And here's what happens if I head to the surface now. Make sense?
Mhm.
So there are two really cool predictive models. And I encourage you, if you'd like, Peyton, I know you two are coming in the shop tomorrow. I would be happy to pull out my my Perdix tomorrow and show you and help you set your computer up so that you can see it.
Yeah, that'd be helpful to see that the GF99 stuff that you're talking about. That'd be great.
Absolutely. Be more than happy to. I do not have my computer here with me. I probably should have brought it. I apologize. But I could absolutely take a picture of it tomorrow in the on position, and you can all make the choice. And again, I always like to put this out there that y'all are big kids and you all put big kid pants on this morning. There's a lot of free will in my classes. As long as this doesn't affect your safety, I'm all for it. Just if you want to try something new, only thing I suggest is ask me about it. Let's talk about it through. There's a good chance that I probably done it really badly, and we can either say, oh, that's a bad idea, let's not do it that way, or here's how it went the last time, or last time I heard about it, saw it, and wonder if there's a way we can correct it and make it better. So I'm all about talking about it. It's all good. So set it up the way I show you, or don't. It's completely up to you. But I can tell you that this kind of information is gold as you look at it. So GF99, GF surface. Anybody have any questions on those two? I think they're gold. Perfect. Peyton, I see a question in your mind.
No, I'm sorry. I have no question at the moment. Sorry.
Okay, cool. Hopefully that was nice and clear. There's some other cool features that you can add to your Perdix as well as your Garmin as well. One of the other ones I really like is there is a Delta +5. Now, what Delta +5, or you can also use the at +5, is they are additional pieces to the total time to surface. And they're kind of neat. And here's how you can use them to your advantage. I like the Delta +5 because what that's telling you is if I stay at this depth, so if I'm at 150 feet, I'm diving along in this really cool wreck, and I see that my total time to surface with Deco stops, not including safety stop, let's make sure we're clear on that, is going to be 20 minutes. Cool. I've got plenty of gas for a 20-minute ascent to the surface. Awesome. I'm in good shape. Delta +5 will tell you that if I stay for 5 more minutes, how much time will that add to my total time to surface? And that's gold information. And there's a couple ways to use that. One, if you and your buddy want to stay a little longer, you can look at that information and make a competent choice as a team. Can we do this? Is it okay? Have we given ourselves enough margin to do that? Have we not gone as deep as we thought? Have we overgassed ourselves? What are our options? And you can start making those kind of decisions. And that's kind of a neat thing to be able to say, do I have the decision? Another way you can use it, and this is how I probably used it more than anything, is my wife and I used to do, my wife and I still probably have more dry suit dives than we have wetsuit dives. We did a lot of very cold water diving. In fact, it was funny. I was talking to a friend of mine today who was still in Idaho, and they went diving at the reservoir we like to go diving at. And he says, yeah, I went diving yesterday or over the weekend. I'm sorry. And he says that the water temperature was 50 degrees at the surface and 41 degrees at depth. And I was like, oh man, no, thank you. I told him, I says, I went out last week and it was 76 at depth and I was cold. He called me a wimp. It's all good. But how I would use that when I was cold water diving is one of the things you don't want to do is become hypothermic, as we all heard from my story yesterday. And Nikki luckily she's out of the room right now, or she would come over and tell you how she yelled at me about this. She still yells. It's been 7 years since that happened. She still yells at me about it. Holy cow! One day she'll forget about it, I hope.
No.
But anyway, as I start to get cold, I can start looking at the Delta +5 and I can say, okay, I'm starting to get a little cold now. What happens to my decompression profile if I stay for 5 more minutes? And I start realizing, oh, it's starting to build. And you'll find that there's times where for every minute you stay at depth, you get 2 more minutes added to your total time to surface. And I've been at depths where that actually added for every minute's down, I got 3 more minutes added to my Deco profile. So it can add up fast. You can literally get to the point where you stay for 5 more minutes. It's going to add 15 more minutes to your total time to surface. And that can be, certainly okay, and it can certainly be bad, but at least it gives you a predictive model that says, okay, can I do this? So delta +5 is my favorite, but you can also do at +5, which will give you your new total time to surface if you stay at that depth. It just depends on how you want to look at it. So I like it at delta because I just like to know the addition, but you can also look at it however you like, and they both work. So that's how I use it. And then there's another piece of that that you can add to your dive computer as well that is absolute gold. Anybody have a chance to read the article that I suggested last night? No? Oh my goodness. Non-homework doing fools, man. Oh geez. They give you an easy cheat that you can act like ace plus students here. No problem. I'm just kidding. So the next piece of this that's under discussed, especially in recreational diving, especially in the deep diving phase of diving, is gas density. This is a big subject, and unfortunately it is not discussed nearly enough, not even closely enough as we go through this. So gas density, we all are dealing with a specific amount of gas density as we breathe. And now this is another one of those times. It's not if you talk to a physicist, they'll say this is the incorrect way to, gas does not have weight, it has density. Oh, well, okay, whatever. All I know is that if I have one cubic foot of aluminum, it's a significant amount lighter than 1 cubic foot of lead. The density makes all the difference, right? But as we go through that, we start realizing that each gas we breathe has a specific gas density or weight. And so for the purpose of our discussion tonight, I'm going to call it weight, right? So as we start looking through it, air that we breathe, that's 21% air or oxygen, 79% nitrogen, right? It has a gas density of 1.293 grams per liter. Okay, easy enough. A simple thing. And that's what our body's used to doing, right? It's used to breathing 1.9. It's if we can equivalent it out and say it's 1.293 pounds per square inch, right? We realize that's what we're used to doing, right? And we've all been to the gym. We all text Randy, goes to the gym, and he lifts massive weights. He's benching 490 on a regular. Right, you should see this.
Ounces.
I do my 12-ounce curls all the time. It's all good. So we realize that that's what our body's accustomed to. So as you might realize, and as gas gets more dense, it gains this weight to it. It becomes heavier, harder to move through this process. So if the air we're breathing is 1.293 grams per liter, and let's just round that for discussion today. That the 2.93 is important, but we're going to say 1.3 because it's easier math. So we'll say it's 1.3 grams per liter at the surface. When we get down to our first 1 bar, our first atmosphere, if you will, that's going to double, right? So if we get down to 2 ATA or 2 bar, instead of being 1.3 grams per liter, now it's going to be 2.6 grams per liter. Same Dalton math we used for figure out the partial pressure. We know the air now, instead of it being a partial pressure of 0.21, we know at 33 feet, it's going to be a partial pressure of 0.42. Well, same thing with the density of this. It's getting thicker, right? It's twice as much of the gas is occupying the same amount of space. It's going from aluminum to lead, more dense, right? It's heavier, right? Well, as all of us know at the gym, we do really good. We go over the curl bar and we're curling 75 pounds. The pretty girl comes along, all of a sudden we're putting that rack in and we're changing it to 95 pounds, right? Well, we can't do that very much. Our body is not designed for that. It's designed for, we've built up a customization to a specific amount of weight to be able to do this. Well, sorry, Thomas. Sorry, SDI is trying to call me and they can just wait. There we go. So as we go through this process, we start realizing that our lungs are muscles, right? That's a muscle, right? It takes effort and strength to be able to breathe that in and breathe that out. We all remember, the guy in the iron lung, his lungs weren't strong enough because they were very weak, so he had to have an iron lung to do it for him because there's no muscle there. Well, same thing with this gas we're breathing. We're designed to breathe 1.3 grams per liter. That's our discussion point. As we get to 33 feet, that's when 2.6. What happens when it's at 66 feet? What's the math on that?
3.9.
3.9. Ding, ding, ding. Somebody can do math today. Awesome. So we get to 99 feet. What's our new math?
5.2.
5.2. Okay. So we're starting to get, as you can see, it's getting heavier and heavier really quickly. So we start getting to this idea that we need to understand that we are dealing with something called the work of breathing, or the WOB. And it's something we really need to be intently understanding of. So work of breathing is the integral of pressure as a function of volume that's used to measure the effort required to breathe. So a high work of breathing means it takes more effort or more energy. Typically, they measure that in joules to draw a breath. And a measure of that volume, typically in liters. So the high work of breathing results in increased carbon dioxide production. And that carbon dioxide increases can result in things like hypercapnia, nitrogen narcosis, loss of conscious, among other things. I mean, so none of those things sound fun. Well, the fun part about this is at the University of Auckland, New Zealand, which oddly enough is the world leader in studying of dive maladies. You wouldn't believe it, but these New Zealanders are big in their dive maladies, and some of the world's most famous divers are based in Auckland, New Zealand. And so they did some studies on this, and it was pretty interesting. And what they determined that dives that were accidents multiplied by a factor of 3 to 5 anytime they use a gas density of more than 6. And 50% of dives over 5.2 grams per liter had to be aborted for issue. That's pretty significant if you think about it. So what they said they came up with is they put a couple of limits on it, like partial pressure of oxygen. We use that 1.4 and 1.6. They put a couple of limiters on this, and they said, okay, gas density of 5.2 grams per liter is our target density or less, with a hard maximum of 6.2 grams per liter. Now, if you really want to just spin your mind for a little bit, use the math, and I can give you all the numbers and help you with this if you'd like, and go back and start doing the math calculations on some of these deeper dives where there was an accident. For example, there's a really great movie on YouTube, if you get a chance to watch it, called Dave Not Coming Back. It's about a dive accident in Bozeman Gat in South Africa. And this guy, his name was Dave. He was driving a rebreather, and this is a very, very, very deep cave located at 5,000 foot elevation in South Africa. And he was diving on a rebreather, but he got to an extremely high partial pressure of gas in the 7.9 to 8.2 range. I've done the math a couple times. It depends on what the truth is and what the real depth was, right? And I've heard a couple different things, and I've talked to some people that were there as well, which was really interesting. But what they determined is at the 7.9 grams per liter, that he was breathing such a high concentration or high weight of density of gas that his carbon dioxide retention was huge, and he was extremely hypercapnic at this point, to the point that he got tangled up in a rope, and he took the rope, tried to get it over his head, and on this particular dive, he changed his GoPro setup and put a GoPro on his helmet. It got tangled in his helmet, and it was enough to cause panic that caused him to pass out and die. So, gas density. So, if we start looking at this, we figured out really quickly, how deep did it take for us to get to 5.2 on just air? Randy? Beckman?
99 feet.
99 feet. We got to 5.2 grams per liter. And we get to the point where we start getting to a concern of hypercapnia. Now, here's where it gets even more fun. Which weighs more? Oxygen or nitrogen? Which is denser?
Oxygen.
Oxygen. Oxygen weighs 1.428 grams per liter. Nitrogen weighs 1.251 grams per liter. So our traditional logic is, okay, to avoid nitrogen narcosis, I'm going to move into nitrox, right? That's our traditional logic, correct?
Yes.
So if I start moving into nitrox, it's actually getting denser. So even though a traditional mix might be appropriate for certain dives because I'm reducing nitrogen, I'm actually increasing the density and causing other problems. So it's my contention, and if you read my paper on this, I think you'll agree, that more symptoms that are passed off as being nitrogen narcosis are actually hypercapnia. They're working with too high a gas density. So I wrote this out. So the use of nitrox 32%, which is 68% nitrogen, at 110 feet or 34 meters seawater, exceeds the recommended amount of gas density, and that's at 5.66 grams per liter. That's just 32% nitrox going to 110 feet. You're 5.66. So as we start looking at that, one of the calculations we've got to start adding to our calculation of this is we've got to start calculating in, okay, how do I reduce the density of the gas that I'm breathing? Peyton, what do you think? What would be a simple way to reduce the density of gas?
If you added more nitrogen content to it, is by weight, that would weigh less.
What about, is there a third gas we could talk about?
Sure. Yeah.
What's the third gas that might be beneficial to us?
Helium.
Helium.
Helium. Ding, 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 ding. All right. Anybody want to take a guess what the gas density of helium is?
It's got to be a lot lighter.
Absolutely. Take a guess. If nitrogen is 1.251 grams per liter and oxygen is 1.428 grams per liter, what's the density of helium?
Maybe 1.1.
How about 0.179? So about 1/5, 1/6 the density of nitrogen. So real quickly, you can see by adding helium, we start reducing the density of the gas dramatically. And so not only we can replace the nitrogen with a inert gas that has no effect on us, as long as we're breathing the correct blend of oxygen, we're good. As long as we're replacing that with the correct, replacing one for one, we get an immediate benefit. Our gas is going to lighten up, right? It's like dumping our fat cousin out of the back of the pickup and picking up our thin cousin, right? We want to make sure we're working in such a way that we're lightening things up. And that's an easy way to do it. So as we start getting deeper and deeper, we can start saying, okay, well, how do we lighten this up? What can we do? Well, a simple answer is helium. Helium is really an amazing answer. Now, there is a downside to helium, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But as we start talking gas densities, let's do some real math. And let's I'm going to pull up I have a cheat sheet spreadsheet. You guys are welcome to it. There are a couple little kinks in it that I'm working out. I'm on version 10.86, so it's not like I've spent much time with this one. Let's see, share. But you're welcome to it. Just know I'm always tinkering with this. This is my gas calculation spreadsheet that I use to figure out what can I do and how can I do it. I start off with on the left-hand side, and I say, okay, let's make this realistic for you guys. I'm going to do a 150-foot dive, and I'm going to do it for 30 minutes. And that's going to be my initial run time. My first gas, we're going to say is just going to be 21%, and we'll figure out if that's appropriate. Well, we can see popping up right over here, our gas density, if I dove 150 feet on 21% is 7.14. Outside of range. We want to be 5.2 is our goal or less. 6.2 is a max in a pinch. So we've got to figure something else out on that. So this is a simple way to do that. And by the way, I still have a lot of friends that were Northeast divers that did all these big crazy dives. And in the 80s and 90s, they were doing these exact dives. In fact, they were actually doing 200-foot dives on air. And their joke was, I forgot about it, and I came home. So you can see even their partial pressure of O is too high. So let's go back to our 150. Let's figure this out. So we can make some choices. Well, the first one is we can reduce the amount of nitrogen in our system, because we know our partial pressure of oxygen is 1.16. So we can go to a better mix. So what if we did 24%? Okay, we can even look at 25%. There we go. 25% and 26% at 150 feet. Little over, so 25% was our magic number. So there we go. 25% gets us to 1.386. We're right there. Perfect. That's the deepest point of our dive. We're fantastic. We still have a second problem. 7.18. Well, that's an easy fix. You guys are getting certified to 40%. What happens if we put 40% in? Oh my heck. 4.8 grams per liter. We reduced our gas density significantly. So from that magic 7.18 to 4.8. That gives us equivalent narcotic depth of 48 feet. So that tells you that we can do a 150-foot dive for 30 minutes, and it will feel like a 48-foot dive. Does that sound interesting to anybody?
Yes. Wow.
Absolutely. So as we start going through this process, that's the amazing benefit of helium. And you don't even have to do that much. I mean, if you want to save some money, okay, fine. Let's do 30%. That's still 5.4. You're still in range. Overall, you're still at a narcotic depth of 71 feet. You're a little over what I would like. You're in that kind of zone, right? But it's still a significantly better dive. I can tell you last year I had 6 spear fishermen that came out to do a ANDP course with me. And one of the things you guys may or may not know, but the Florida professional spear fishermen is all their names should be like Jethro or Billy Bob, or we lovingly call them the Florida Rednecks, right? They're amazing, but some of the ideas that I see out of the spearfishing community are terrifying. I actually had a class with some of these guys, and they were all telling me that they're doing these 200-foot air dives and all this stuff. And I asked the question in the class, and I said, guys, how many of you know somebody close to you that's had DCS and had to take a chamber ride? And they talked about it for a little bit. They came back to me, and this was in April. They said, do you want to know this year or overall? And if that doesn't just make the hair on the back of your neck stand up and go, oh my shell, nothing will, right? And so I got to working with them and finally convinced them that they needed to reduce their profiles a little bit and add helium. I took them down and did a 150-foot dive on just 15% helium. I wanted to prove to them just a little bit of helium in the mix was worth it. Every one of them was so blown away at this. It was just 15% or 20%? 15% over what they were currently doing from the 7.18 to 6.29. They said, oh my God, it's so much clearer. I have so much better vision. Everything felt better. And so the next set of dives I did with them, I took them up to 30% for a similar dive, just to give them a reference. Took them to 5.4. And again, they were like, oh my God, that dive was even better. I was clear. I could have shot so many, they'd looked at different fish at cobias and AJs and right? That's how they make their money. A little bit of helium goes a long way. And as you can see, it starts dropping that gas density. Now, the challenge with gas, with helium, is there's now, because we're dealing with such a fast and light gas, now we end up with a new challenge, and we call it the helium penalty. It's the same thing that we see with every new kid that gets a sports car. There's a penalty for that. He's going to get a whole bunch of traffic tickets because he's going too fast, right? And that's okay, as long as we understand that there's a penalty. So typically what we find is for every 20% of helium we add, we're going to increase our deco time by about 10%. And as you can see, as you might guess, if I have a 10-minute deco, that's not a huge amount. If I'm doing a 20%, if I'm doing a 40%, I'm now 20% more. So I'm suddenly at 14 minutes instead of 10. Ooh, okay. I get a better dive. I get to remember the dive. I get a safer dive. I just have to spend a little bit more time on my deco, right? So I'm going to get a little bit more time added too, because helium enters the tissue because it's so thin and so light and so low in density that it enters the tissues very quickly. The problem is as it comes out of tissue, it comes out just as quickly. It is a fast little booger. So understanding that and moving through this process and realizing that helium is a magic wonder. Absolutely. I will not do a dive past 100 feet for any amount for a length of time without a little bit of helium in the mix. It's just not worth it for me. It's not something I'm willing to do. But knowing that, I also realize that as I add that helium, I add a little bit of a penalty to that, then it's going to take me a little bit more time in deco. I'm going to hit deco a little faster, and that's okay. I'm going to spend a little more time on deco. I just plan it out. It's not that big a deal. I make sure my efficiency is there. So as we go through this process, understanding, it's like y'all are too young. Randy's probably the only one that understands this, that back in the 80s, there's G.I. Joe, and he used to say, yo, Joe, knowing is half the battle, right? And
Yes.
So that's the big thing we need to understand is knowing is half the battle. If you know what the problems are, you know now how to work with them. And you know how to work past them. So that's our challenge as we start looking through this. So we start getting through density. Guys, I've talked a lot, and I probably talked more than I anticipated, to be honest with you. I talked straight for an hour. God, I'm so sorry. What I really like is let's go start with Peyton. Give me an understanding of two things you learned from this and one thing I could give a little bit better explanation for.
I think just some of the stuff that you mentioned about the dive computer would be helpful to see kind of, I like learning from other people and how they have their setup, and just, I know those things I never get to the bottom of all the capacity that those things have. So just seeing some of the tricks that you have on that would be interesting.
Gotcha. Perfect. We'll absolutely get into that tomorrow when you guys come by. Bring your computers in when you come to pick up your tanks, and let's take a look at it and go from there. Not a problem.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the big thing. All right. How about you? What did you pick up?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I enjoy the discussions of the density of the gases. I mean, I have never heard of hypercapnic risk as it related to a density of a gas. That somehow escaped me entirely throughout my diving journey. So I appreciate you speaking of that.
Good. What can I explain a little bit better? What was not quite as clear as it could have been for you?
I'll just go back to something I was thinking yesterday that I forgot to ask you. The 1.4 partial pressure and at work and 1.6 partial pressure of oxygen at rest. I don't fully understand how we're factoring that into our dive plan. I get how we come up with MODs from it and how it works in Dalton's formula, but I don't have a good grasp of how we're operationalizing that.
Gotcha. So when we're setting a working load of 1.4, that's the maximum partial pressure of oxygen we want to get to. The nice thing is when we get our partial pressure of oxygen to that level, it means we have a lot less of other gases in the mix that we're dealing with, less helium, less nitrogen that can enter the tissue compartments and have to be off-gassed. So we're limiting out that, which means if we're limiting out things, gases that can enter into the tissue compartments, it means we have less deco time. So that gives us that efficiency point. The problem is we want to think about oxygen like a medicine, like anything else. The way to think about that is it's like aspirin, right? It's a dose. When we breathe anything, we do something other than what our bodies are typically designed to do, or intake. It's a dose of something. So if I was taking aspirin, I could take one aspirin every 5 hours, right? No problem. Probably even could take an aspirin once every 2 hours. Probably no problem, right? But can I take 5 aspirin every hour? Probably not. Bad stuff starts to happen. So there's an amount of dose of oxygen that I can take in a specific amount of time that's okay. When I start getting over that, then it starts becoming a problem. My body is not able to metabolize it the way I would like it to. And while it's good, aspirin absolutely is a great example because it's as you get older, you know, the doctors want you, every adult male, to take an aspirin every day because it helps reduce the potentials of a heart attack, right? And if you do think you're having a heart attack, you should take 2 aspirin, and it helps alleviate the potential of a serious stroke or heart attack, right? It's one of those cool things. So that's how we deal with. That's what the partial pressure of oxygen is we're getting to that maximum dose we want to deal with, where it's still healthy and it doesn't become unhealthy. And the reason it's healthy at 1.4 is we're working. We can get to 1.6 if we stop the workload and we're not working through it. We're not metabolizing as quickly because we're not right. We're relaxed. It goes in. We can deal with that, but we still have a specific amount of dose that we can take of this oxygen. There's only so much that we're allowed. So we limit it to 1.6 partial pressure. So we're breathing 40% nitrox at the surface. And we get down to 33 feet. Now that's equal to 80%. If we get down to 66%, that's 120%. When we get to 82.5 feet, that's 1.4. That's 140% is 82.5 feet. Where it becomes 1.4, 140% partial pressure of oxygen. So we build those limits in, but the joy of it is the more oxygen we add into the balance, the less of the other gases we don't actually need are in there. But again, it's a balancing act, right? Now that I've added helium to it, now all of a sudden we have a 3-legged stool. We're trying to balance out. Each leg has to be equal, and it has to be considered in the mix. We can only have so much oxygen in this process. Great, but if we take out less oxygen, that means we have more nitrogen because it has to balance out. And all of a sudden, now if we had helium, now we're adding a third balancing act to this magical wonderment that we're dealing with. And so as we go through that idea, we're creating a balancing act between what we can take and what we want. Whereas the partial pressure of oxygen allows us, it controls how much bottom time we have based upon that, because it's not allowing, it's removing the nitrogen and the helium from the mix that we have to breathe. Does that make more sense?
Mhm.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, thank you.
Good. Oh, happy to help. Absolutely. All right, Landon the boy. What's 2 things you learned and 1 thing I could explain better?
So the also the dive computer stuff for me, I was looking at the Perdix 2 manual today and trying to think about how I want to change my setup.
Oh, good luck on that.
Yeah, it was pretty intense. Actually, I'll skip for a bit and go to my question, because one of the things that I'm pretty sure the manual said it could do is it would take your NDL time, and once it goes to 0, it would flip to a mini view. So like you were mentioning the delta +5, the surface gradient factor, the GF99, could you have it so that those aren't being shown while the no deco time is being shown and then flip once you're in deco?
You can, but I wouldn't encourage it. I would encourage having your NDL flip over to ceiling. And what it'll do is it flips over from NDL over to not ceiling, but yes, it's ceiling, but it shows your deco point. If you guys want a really cool video, you want to see what your computer is going to look like when you go into deco? I can do that. I have the power of Grayskull with me today. You guys are all too young for that too. Although I heard Master of the Universe is coming out in theaters. So
I think you think we're a lot younger than we are.
maybe I just feel older than you all as well. So let's see, YouTube channel. Let's see. All right. Let's see. There's Garmin. There's Cirrus. Yeah, here it is. I'm going to turn that off. So here's what your computer is actually going to look like going into Deco. This is on a channel called Teach Me to Dive. It just by chance happens to be my channel. There we go. Hopefully you can see it. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
All righty. So here's the Perdix is right here. This is an Apple Watch. This is a Mark II. This is a Sunto Black. Please don't get a Sunto Black. It is the worst dive computer on the planet. And here is Randy. You might recognize this computer on the left.
I do.
That's what it looks like in dive mode.
I want to come by and see that tomorrow.
So the one we're going to focus on.
We're doing the party. I can't see the screen. I just see black on our end. So I don't know if others can see it, but we can't see it.
Oh no. Let me try.
I can see it, so it's not universal.
Okay. Let me try stop and reshare it and see if that fixes it.
Sorry.
All right. Can you see it now?
Oh, I can see it now. Yeah, yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. Sometimes you just gotta reboot it. So there we go. So this is the one we're focusing on right here, the second computer in. This is a Perdix 2. And what you'll see right now is that NDL, I have 9 minutes and 3 minutes to time to surface, and I'm at 78 feet. Okay. But what happens magically if we go a little farther into this? Now we're at 7 minutes to NDL. We all should recognize that. 6 minutes to NDL. And you can go to Teach Me Dive and you can watch this video anytime you'd like. I've got tons of videos on there. It's a great way to cheat. Now we're at 3 minutes to NDL. It's gone to the warning mode. Oh, Benjamin, you're doing bad stuff. I kicked it over to compass. Let's see. Some information. Get out of there. There we go. Okay, so back up a little bit. Now, magically, I've kicked off the bottom screen and at the top, now it says 20 feet is my stop, and I need to do that for 1 minute. So 20 feet stop, that's my ceiling. Don't go above your ceiling, right? It's now telling me I'm in Deco. My GF factor was 5085 on this particular dive. So 20 feet is my ceiling, and I need to stay there for 1 minute before I can clear my Deco. Keep moving a little farther. As I continue into the dive, now I'm 26 minutes into the dive. I'm at 108 feet. Now it's 20 minutes or 20 feet for 2 minutes. And so you start seeing it's building. I'm taking time to be in Deco, but this is what it's going to look like. 27 feet at 101 feet. I was at a very high altitude lake, by the way, on this. Now I'm at 94 feet, but it still says 20 feet for 3 minutes now. So my Deco time is building. I'm getting more and more Deco time as we go along. 20 feet for 4 minutes. I'm at 86, so I'm starting to ascend. But let's look over here. GF surface, or Sir GF, right here. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
My Sir GF is at 102%. I'm definitely in Deco. No doubt about it, right? And this is just a demo film that I did. So we can back up a little bit. You can see right here, I'm in Deco, 20 feet for 3 minutes, but I'm at 99%. Now, interestingly enough, look at the GF99. GF99 says I'm on gassing, which is true. I'm deep enough that I'm still adding more gas to the tissue compartments, which tells me I'm still building. Now I'm at 101% of my Sir GF and at 20 feet for 3 minutes, and I'm still on gassing. Let's keep going a little bit. 20 feet for 4 minutes. Still 20 feet for 4 minutes, but I'm at 103%. And now I'm finally shallow enough. I'm at 69 feet. And my Sir GF is at 1%. So now it tells me finally I've come up shallow enough that I'm beginning the off-gassing process. Does that make sense? Yep. Now I'm at 1%. I'm at 58 feet. 102%. I'm still at 20 feet for 4 minutes.
So here, now you can see the no deco limits at 0, and it's kind of useless because you have the ceiling up top.
Yes.
Like, couldn't that be flipped to a mini?
It can. It just starts getting confusing because I already have 2 minis on there.
Okay.
So I've got mini 1 and mini 2 already here. It just becomes a lot of information to look at. And I can tell you when you're in Deco, brain becomes Deco brain a little bit.
Got it.
So I try and limit the amount of exposure to additional information as much as I can. Randy, if you wanted to, if you were interested, this is your computer over here. This
Yes.
actually is your computer too. That's the funny part about it. 20 feet for 3 minutes. So your Deco ceiling's right there.
Okay, now is this straight on air?
This is just an air dive.
Wow, okay, I see that 21%. All right.
This was just an air dive. My whole goal was to go down, get into Deco, and gently come out so that everybody could see what happens on these 5 different computers when you go into Deco. That was the whole goal. And
Now,
so,
did they have this all the same settings? I mean, because I see the Apple Watch is saying 10 feet for 3 minutes, and the other one says 20 feet for 3, and then the Paradex says 20 feet for 4.
yep, they all had the exact same settings.
Okay.
So they're within a standard of each other. I mean, you can look at the Mark II here has 20 feet for 3 minutes and 22 seconds. The Perdix is at 20 feet for 4 minutes. The Apple Watch is not designed to be a Deco watch. Its whole goal was, oh shit, you done screwed up, Bob. You need to get, you're in total rubble and you need to get to the surface. So what it does is it says, okay, I'm going to get him to 10 feet and he's going to stay there for 3 minutes and get the hell out of the water. You done screwed up, Bob. So that's its whole goal. That's all it's trying to tell you right here. So we're now at, my GF99 is now 1% at 101. Now you can start seeing it finally start to build up. I'm still at 101%, but I'm beginning the off-gassing process pretty significantly. I'm at 7% there. Now we're starting to cook with butter. Now we're at 23%. I'm really off-gassing pretty quickly. So now it's time to slow down. I'm at 31 feet. I'm at 23% of my GF99. And you can see my my Sur GF is starting to go down. Now I'm at 98%. Now you saw, now I stayed at 30 feet. Look what happened to the GF99. Now it's at 18%. I'm still off-gassing pretty quickly. But my Sur GF is now at 95.
So another question. Sorry, I know I'm
You're
limiting out on questions here. So I understand the purpose of taking density into account when you're planning, but what's the purpose of doing it on your dive computer when you've already done the plan?
It's just a good idea to keep an eye on it. That way it keeps you out of trouble. It's really easy to plan your dive to one level, but it's also a good idea to just got to keep an eye at it and you start knowing that when I start getting closer to 5.2 grams per liter, even if that's in my plan, I can at least keep the idea that, wait a minute, my gas density is getting pretty high. I'm starting to head towards the risk of hypercapnia. So I like to have that information. I'm an information junkie. So I like to have that idea of here's what's going on. Here's my gas density. And here you can also see my at +5 and my delta +5 that I have on here. I've changed one of those to temperature because I like the temperature more. Overall, you can start seeing those deltas, but I like to keep an eye on it. Where am I at in the cycle? What's going on? We can even look back and we can see that my gas density was at 5.0 here. I was starting to definitely get into a level of, yeah, what are you thinking, Bob? You're may not be making the best decision. 5.1. Come on, get out of here. I'm sure there's an easier way to get through this. There we go. Yeah, 5.2 at 108 feet. So as I went down, I was able to keep a better visualization of it. It's like, oh, okay, definitely time to be a little bit more cognizant of what I'm doing and where I'm going. So I started shallowing up. So it's a nice visual representation of, okay, here's what's going on. Here's where I'm at. And here's what's going on. Well, let's continue through the process. And again, I keep it there because I like to keep the information right in front of me.
Okay, Ben, the one that you've highlighted, the yellow framed, that's your Perdix?
That's my Perdix right here.
That's got a lot of information, a shitload of information.
Yeah, the Perdix is information intensive. That's for sure. It's wonderful. This is the DSX from Apex, great computer.
Yes.
This is the Perdix 2. This is a Apple Watch, a Mark II, and a Asunto Black steel. Again, if you think you want to dive tech with Asunto, please don't. Friends don't let friends dive tech in Asunto. They suck. No, they're not horrible. They're just they do some things that I really firmly disagree with and scare the shit out of me. So I won't dive Asunto for tech. It's fine for a recreational computer. It's just not my preference when it comes to a technical computer. But you can see as we kind of go through, I slowed down. I got to my 31 feet, allowed that GF99 to reduce. Went ahead and started heading up a little bit more. Now you can see it's kind of pulling up 21%. Got a little crazy there just because I wanted to be able to show what it looked like, and then went back down. So I'm all clear for my Deco stop. Got a little shallow, but that's what it's actually going to look like. So if you're wondering what Deco actually looks like, there you go. Now you know. Make sense? Did that help?
Cool. Yeah, that was very cool.
Okay. Kind of an interesting thing. Randy, any more questions? I'm happy.
Nope, you got them all. Thanks.
Awesome. Victoria, you have some questions, I'm sure. You're always inquisitive. I love it.
Luckily, a ton of these guys' questions helped me understand my own better. So for me, I think really what I kind of took away is that, like setting your PPO2, like setting now your GF99, your GF high, your GF low, those are all you telling the algorithm that you want to be a certain level of conservative, whereas the surface GF, the delta +5, the at +5, those are all predictive. Those are all telling you what you could do if you stayed or didn't stay.
Yep.
Is that the right differentiation there?
Yeah, absolutely. So you get to have that information, and I really like to know how close to the limit am I. It would suck to be on the freeway in a car without a speedometer, right? Am I speeding? Am I not speeding? In Florida, most likely, if you're going the flow of traffic, you're probably 20 miles over the speed limit, right?
I was going to say in Florida, it doesn't count.
But at least now you know, right? And
Yes.
And that's what it does. It gives you a speedometer, and you can start making more qualified decisions. So it's like having a speedometer and a tachometer on your vehicle. It now gives you that information, so you can start making the decisions. Is this the right thing for me to be doing, and how is it going, right? If I know if I'm on the freeway and it's snowing like mad, 85 miles an hour, probably not the best idea in the world.
My question is there, like, just like there is with MOD and all the other formulas, is there a formula that is regularly used for gas density calculations, or is it just like type it in your computer, let it tell you? There
is a very complicated formula. It's a big pain in the butt to use. The nice thing is the multi-deco and subsurface will both calculate that for you as well. Here's my problem with them, though, and I am working on multi-deco. I had a student a while ago that happened to be a computer genius and with subsurface, and he actually submitted the calculation correction to correct the gas density issue in subsurface. And while at 150 feet in this first class, a calculation error like they're currently making is not a huge deal. When you start getting bigger and you start going to trimix and even worse into hypoxic trimix, that's where it starts becoming a big deal. So one of the things that currently happens in most dive planning software is where air is 1.293, we would typically round that to what?
1.3.
1.3.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, the 3 dive softwares that I'm most familiar with do not do that. They truncate the number. They say, oh, we can only go out to the tenths. So they truncate it to air to be, instead of 1.293, they truncate it to 1.2. And as you might guess, that 900ths is reasonably important. And as you get deeper and deeper, that 900ths adds up reasonably quickly. So it's worth noting, at least in my opinion, that it's better to err on the side of conservativeness towards that under 5.2 than it is to say, oh yeah, I'm going to do this 275-foot dive and I'll just trust the calculations completely that I'm going to be 5.2, because most likely you're going to be 5.4 to 5.5 as you start getting those really deep dives. On these, it's not that big a deal, right? You're not going to be that far off that it's going to be all that much of a problem. But it's also worth noting that as you remove the safety margin, you get that finer line, right? It's like a trapeze, or not a tightrope walker. They don't start at 100 feet off the ground. They start 3 feet off the ground, and they fall, not a big deal. Then they go to 10 feet. They fall, it kind of sucks, but it's not a big deal. Then they get to 50 feet. It's definitely a bigger deal. They get to that 100 feet and they take the net away. It's a huge deal. So it's one of those things. It's worth noting that as you progress in this, definitely adding conservativeness to your dynamic is to your advantage. And so if I could ever get one thing through to all my classes, being conservative never hurts. Make sense?
Yes.
Yep.
There we go. All right. Who did I miss?
Me.
Randy. I'm so sorry, Mr. Beckman.
No problem. First, I'll apologize for my camera. For some reason, my computer's not recognizing its own internal camera again. So I have to reboot my computer. So I just figured I would just go along with the camera off.
Or do we call you Sheriff Beckman?
Yeah. That's the past.
It's all good. Give me 2 things you learned and 1 thing I can explain better.
So the gas densities was pretty interesting, and I didn't realize there was that much of a difference with helium. I thought it was just obviously a lower number, but that's a drastic lower number, which obviously changes how I look at the numbers. The other thing, the gradient factor 99, I understand that, and but where I have a little confusion is the surface gradient factor. Where's that number coming from? So on that, when you just showed us those computers, you were well over 100%. Is that your saturation level?
That's my predictive GF my GF model, right? That's for M value. What that's saying is if I were to surface right now and get to the surface, that's what my gradient factor would be. So we know if that number's GF surface is at 100%, I'm right at the line. There's a chance, or maybe not a chance, that I might get DCS if I come to the surface. But if it's 101, the chances start increasing dramatically that I'm going to get DCS. If it's 150, guaranteed. There's not a question if, it's a matter of how bad it's going to be. Will it be level 3? Will I be able to walk? What's going to happen on that? So that's what it is. It's GF surface, or SUR-GF is a predictive model of where your M value will be if I were at the surface right now.
Okay. So if you just did an immediate ascent, that's
correct.
It would be okay.
Absolutely. And so what we do is, it's a neat way to look at it, is the GF that we set our computer to. So if I set my GF on my computer to 80%, for example, well, once that SUR-GF breaks 80%, I'm in Deco. I get to choose when I go into Deco based upon my conservative factor and how conservative I want to be against the M value. So I get to choose that number. Absolutely. Now, certainly, like all things, like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom with the Christ chat, choose wisely, choose your cup wisely, right? Well, choose your gradient factor wisely, because if you choose wrong, the consequences can be fairly significant. So that's why we say, okay, let's choose wisely. Let's choose a nice 80 or 85. Let's give ourselves a 15 to 20% safety margin between good and bad. That's not a bad plan. There is a guy out that was running around out here. I think he's out of prison again. But he ran around telling everybody, I kid you not, it's a long story. Anyway, he ran around and he was teaching tech out here and told everybody, you need to run your gradient factor GF 99.99, right at the limit. He got a lot of people hurt, and it just wasn't good. It just really wasn't good at all. Got a lot of people hurt. And so you've got to allow for some latitude, right? The idea is that these algorithms They were not designed around you personally. They don't know who you are. They don't care. Frankly, you know, I would love to tell you that the gradient factor loves you and wants to tuck you in at night, but it's just not true. Its job is to give you a basic amount of information and say, okay, this is it. This is where you're at. Give me 1 second, guys. I need to plug in. Somehow my laptop got a little low. I don't know how that happened. It's been plugged in all day. Maybe that's the problem. Let's see. All right. So yeah, these gradient factors, they're really designed around the perfect specimen of a person, right? You know, I love to jokingly say it's designed around the 19-year-old Navy kid that gets every morning, eats square meal, runs 5 miles. The algorithm is all based around Peyton, right? Young and shape, you know, got the world by the tail and ready to go. He runs 10 miles before breakfast every morning and lifts a significant amount of weight on his way to work. And he's got dumbbells in his car, right? He's good to go. That's who it's based upon. It's definitely not based on you, Randy, or me. So as we go through this, so it's to your advantage to add some safety. Sorry, I kind of rambled there for a little bit.
All right, thank you. That helped.
Absolutely. Good. I'm glad I always help. Who did I miss? Did I miss anybody? Randy, Texas.
Yes.
I missed you.
I'm seriously, I'm learning so much. It's just like information overload. I doubt if I'm ever going to go down to below 150 feet, but it's great for me to know what this Deco thing is all about. I'm learning a lot. So the questions that I have are probably frivolous at this point.
Right on. Who else do we have? Is Rodrigo here? I thought I saw Rodrigo. Rodrigo, are you here? Can you?
He popped in for a while.
I still see him on here. He's ignoring us. So Rodrigo's ignoring us. Well, there we go. All right, guys. That is how that works. Now, fun story. This is a little bit off topic, but as we move into this, there's another gas that is being experimented with right now, and it's really super interesting. And if anybody knows the name Richard Harris, he's kind of the leading factor on this. And Richard Harris is, if you don't know this guy, he is a nut in a fun way. He's the most adventurous person I know. He was the anesthesiologist for the Thai rescue divers, so that's probably where you know the name. But he decided with a group of friends, and they've been researching this for a while, that there's this lighter gas called hydrogen. And the density of hydrogen, so let's remember, helium is 1.179. 0.179. Hydrogen is 0.09. So hydrogen is almost half the density of helium. And as you might guess, at deep depths, that's pretty impressive. So one of the things that happens when people start getting these deep ultra depths at 250, 300 feet, is there's another disorder that's called high pressure nervous system disorder. And we don't have a lot of information on really what causes this, other than the nerves start going crazy. It causes handshakes, disorientation, things like this, right? It's where the gas begins to start attacking the nervous system. And so they have and they also have the challenge is, if you're doing a 900-foot dive, what's the partial pressure of oxygen at 900 feet that you have to use to be under 1.4? And does helium get to the point that it's still too dense, that you're starting to get that high density of gas, right? And so if we look at that, these become real problems. And so they said, wait a minute, what if we used hydrogen? Will that fix it? And it absolutely does. And so your fun story about this is, I asked Richard, I says, well, how did you determine to put hydrogen in? Because if you mix more than 4% hydrogen with air and you get any kind of spark, you get a pretty significant explosion. It's not a little explosion either. It's pretty significant, right? It knock you on your ass kind of deal. And he says, well, I was worried about that too, because they were using rebreathers, and the problem is these rebreathers bellows and counter lungs get really dry, and they're canvas, and we all know when canvas gets really dry, it can cause static electricity. The other thing you may not realize is in a CCR, there's anywhere between 4 and 7 O sensors, and if you've ever seen an O sensor, it's an electronic item that literally electricity is running through it. So I don't know about you, but having an electric diode in the middle of something that can explode doesn't sound like the brightest idea in the entire world. So what he was worried about the same thing. So what he did, he says, the first thing we had to do is we had to get the hydrogen to my house. And he says, you know what it takes to get a 320 cubic foot K bottle of hydrogen to your house? I says, no, I've never bought a bottle of hydrogen. He says, you just have to have a credit card and they'll deliver it. No big deal. And, okay, so he gets this bottle of hydrogen. He says, the next problem we had is hydrogen, to be safe, they reverse thread the nozzle, right, or the valve. No big deal. He says, so we did some plumbing. We were able to load up a bottle with hydrogen. No big deal. So okay, so you got a bottle loaded with hydrogen, and you decide to hook this up to your rebreather. Now what? He says, well, I gave my wife the credit card. I sent her to the mall to go shopping for some new outfits. While she was at the mall, I put my rebreather on a timer in the pool and set it to go on, and I went and hid behind the garage. True story. True. That's how they determined that he probably wasn't going to blow up by using hydrogen in his rebreather. But the cool part is they went out and they did this big cave in New Zealand. They've been exploring this cave for about 15 years, and they're now down to 990 feet of depth in this cave, of actual depth. And he said they decided to use it in this cave, and the next problem they had is, well, how do we figure out a Deco schedule for this dive? And he said, we didn't. We just used a Helium schedule. We just said no, and we just added a little extra time to it. That was the schedule we decided to use. And he said that's what we did. So, but he said he noticed when he got down to 400 feet, where he normally starts to feel HPNS, high pressure nervous system disorder, is he said all of a sudden when he kicked on the hydrogen, the HPNS was gone completely. No more HPNS. And they were able to get down without any HPNS. And so they did the first dive. Let's see, hold on. There we go. So they got to the end of the dive. They did their 16 hours of Deco, literally 16 hours of freaking Deco. And they called it N+1. Nobody died. So, but so there are experiments going on. Unfortunately, last May they went out and did 2 dives in Bozeman Ghat, and after the second dive, about 2 hours after the dive, Richard Harris got significant symptoms, and it became a huge problem. And they ended up having to air flight him out to a chamber, and he spent 2 days going through Schedule 6 on the chamber. And so he's decided that he doesn't want to be the test guinea pig on hydrogen any further. Probably not a bad plan. So anyway, so that's the interesting thing of kind of where diving is going. They're experimenting with hydrogen. Now there's another kind of concept as we kind of move through this, guys, that you'll start getting the idea of, and that's the type of oxygen we're using overall. And what I mean by that is the partial pressure. So, and somebody brought it up yesterday with that. Let me get back to my correct notes here. There we go. There we go. And we start getting the idea that, wait a minute, as we start getting deeper and deeper to your guys' points, was what about the partial pressure oxygen? Is there a point where 21% is too much? What's the maximum operating depth for 21%? Anybody know?
190 something, isn't it?
187 feet, right? So as we start getting to this point, at 187 feet, 21% is too high a partial pressure, right? We're getting a little crazy on this. So we start moving into out of what we would consider to be a normoxic gas. By definition, that's any gas but that would be 20 to 21% in the normal breathing atmosphere. We can start moving to something called a hypoxic gas. Now, hypoxic gas is exactly what you might think. It causes hypoxia because it's too low a partial pressure. And that's where we start getting that 19, 18, typically we consider any hypoxic gas to be 18% or less. And where that becomes important is when we start doing these, we start moving past where we're currently at into the next realm, where we want to start using a lower partial pressure of gas. Now, your certification at the end of this is for 2135, with 21% being your lowest and 35% being your highest. Now, let's add a caveat to that. The standards say that's plus or minus 5%. The reason being is trimix is a pain in the ass to mix. It doesn't always act the way you want it to when you're mixing. I am a certified gas blender, and I still think it's a pain in the ass. So it gave you a plus or minus 5% to allow your dive shop to be a little bit more kind to you. But we need to start realizing that on that partial pressure of oxygen, normal atmospheric normoxic is 21%. We can breathe at that. If we start breathing at the surface to that lower hypoxic level at 16%, we get lethargic. Our mental process is reduced. At 12%, most likely we're going to go unconscious. At 10%, we're going to die. Make sense? Now, we can get hypoxic in a couple different ways. And one of those is by using too high a partial pressure of gas, where we're building up too much carbon dioxide. Now, remember, one of the things that's important to understand as we kind of get this idea when we start talking about hypercapnia is 60% of the oxygenation of your body comes from the bottom 30% of our lungs. Anybody want to take a stab in the dark of where they think most of your carbon dioxide is going to build up?
In your lungs.
Where in your lungs, though?
In your upper lungs.
You think so?
It's denser, so bottom.
There we go. So carbon dioxide, because of the work of breathing so hard, it's not able to be pushed out. It's denser, it's heavier, and it has a harder time moving. It's going to accumulate at the bottom. It's not, your lungs aren't strong enough to push it out. So you're going to start building up your carbon dioxide in the bottom third of your lungs, where 60% of oxidation happens. So now your body is down to 40% of its ability to oxidate if you fill up that bottom 30%. So we can certainly become hypercapnic, as well as that's where we start getting that lethargy. We get reduced mental process. We're building that up. So we need to realize that those are the things that can happen on the surface. Now, there's a secret squirrel thing that I'm going to tell you guys. You guys can't tell anybody else how you beat that. It's called travel gas. You get a smaller cylinder, like a 19 or a 30, and you fill it with the appropriate gas. It doesn't even have to be a complicated gas. It could be 21%. So if I'm doing a really deep dive and I've decided that 1070 is my gas of choice because I'm doing a 300-foot dive, cool. That's awesome. But I certainly can't breathe that on the boat to go down, because I'm going to pass out and die before I get to 100 feet. That's not good. Dying during diving, I heard, is bad. I haven't tried it yet. I'm just going to take a stab in the dark that that's not a good thing. So as we go through this, we have to figure out, how do I get from surface to, say, 110 feet? Well, I load up a travel gas, and I can roll up a 21% travel gas so that I get down to that 110 feet, where that partial pressure of 10% gas now is suddenly 40%. Is that correct? Be more like 42%, but does that sound about right, guys? Yes, no, maybe so. 10% of the surface becomes what partial pressure at depth?
At what depth, man?
99 feet.
40%.
Yep, absolutely. Well, good. My math's not off today. So those are the things to kind of be aware of, and that's kind of where we're going. When we start hearing about normoxic and hypoxic blends, you start getting into trimix versus advanced trimix. That's what we're talking about. We're starting to talk about reducing the partial pressure of the oxygen to appropriate levels so that I can get to those deep levels. We have people come through the shop all the time, and that's their whole goal. They want to, I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to lean. You guys look comfortable. I'm going to lean back, and I'm going to get comfortable too. So there we go. My easy chair. I love it. So we have people come through the shop all the time that they're going out to do Peacock Cave or something, some crazy deep cave where they want to go. They're going to hit 275, 280, 300 feet in this cave. So, and they'll breathe these 10% mixes, right? But the problem is you have to have a second mix that's appropriate to get you down to that depth. And that's what we're talking about. Make sense? So the other thing we worry about in this, and part of that balancing act, is that dose of oxygen. And it was really great that we had somebody that was sharp enough to kind of catch the idea of what is the dose of oxygen? How does that work? What is that 1.4? Why? Why is that important to know? Well, it's important because it works into two different directions. The first one is the oxygen toxicity with the pulmonary oxygen toxicity effect. And we often talk about that, the Lorraine Smith effect. Dr. J. Lorraine Smith first started studying oxygen toxicity in the pulmonary cavity in the late 1800s. And oddly enough, his counterpart that he worked with was Paul Burt. And they worked together and they studied this very closely. And what they determined was that the body can only stand so much oxygen at a time before bad stuff starts happening overall. So they determined that there's got to be a clock on that. How much can I stand? How long can I stand it? Well, the first thing that they ran into is pulmonary oxygen toxicity. And this is where the oxygen actually overwhelms the alveolar and passes and starts shutting down the hemoglobin barrier to the point that it cannot accept oxygen. It starts hardening the alveolar and hardening the lung structure to the point that all of a sudden you're not able to absorb and process oxygen, right? You know, I like to think of it kind of like the Willy Wonka effect. Remember the kid that became a blueberry? Just couldn't process anymore. He became a blueberry, right? Same idea. You're just over processing this as you go through this. So as we think about this, what are other things that can happen when we over process too much oxygen? Texas Randy? What do you think? What are some of the things that happen if you're over processing oxygen in your lung structure? Did I lose Texas Randy?
No, I'm thinking about that.
Okay.
It might be another point of distinction because Randy L also happens to live in Texas.
Oh. All right. Well, now we have IBM Randy and Texas Randy.
Okay.
There we go. IBM Randy. So what do you think might happen? What are some of the signs and symptoms if my lungs stop being able to process? Would it become harder to breathe? IBM Randy?
You can't absorb that much oxygen into your body without some kind of harm coming on.
Yeah, so it'd be harder. So that would be the first thing. Is it harder to breathe? And if it's harder to breathe, how would that present? Would that be like a tightness of the chest or pain in the chest?
I would think like you're suffocating.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's actually where it works out to is we start getting tightness in the chest, soreness in the throat, difficulty breathing. Eventually, we actually fall into hypoxia because our body just throws up its hands and says, "Nope, no more. I'm done for the day. I've done my thing. I'm out." So oxygen toxicity pulmonary or the J. Lorraine Smith effect, signs and symptoms: sore throat, coughing, tightness in the chest, difficulty breathing. All of those can be. But now, good news is it does take a significant amount of oxygen exposure, a high oxygen dose to get there. The other side of that, though, is when we start getting into the point of oxygen toxicity where it's central nervous system. So central nervous system toxicity tends to be more common for several different reasons overall. And a lot of times it's because of our diet, our hydration, as well as there's a fair amount of medications that can cause oxygen toxicity through the central nervous system to be more prevalent. Any drug that's a simple salt, like for ADD or ADHD, for psychopathy, anything like those, absolutely cause an extreme sensitivity on the in the brain that high doses of oxygen affect it even more so. So if you are on medication, it is to your advantage to have a frank and private talk with a DAN physician and say, hey, I'm taking what's the big ADD medication, Adderall. So if I'm on Adderall, how is this going to affect my technical diving? What should I look out for? Am I okay? It's to your advantage, right? So be aware that the body interacts with things in a weird way as it goes through this. So if you are, caffeine absolutely affects how your oxygen processes the system. It makes the heartbeat faster. You process nitrogen faster into the tissue. So caffeine, right? So be aware as you're moving through this world, as you change the norm of the body, you're changing everything else. Make sense?
Yes.
So we got some pretty specific limits as we looked at it. In the general O2 chart, as we start looking at this, at 1.4 on a single dive gives us about 150 to 180 minutes of clock time. It's a pretty significantly long dive. A 24-hour period, we get 180 minutes as you got to go through this. So one of the things we want to make sure we're taking into account is we're watching the amount of clock time in either OTU or CNS clock. So we want to make sure we're taking effect and look at that as well as we're doing this. Central nervous system toxicity has some pretty clear signs and symptoms as we kind of go through this. It's in the central nervous system. So what do you guys think? What one might be a symptom of central nervous system toxicity? Mr. Beckman?
Some numbness and tingling, maybe.
Sure. So, Rodrigo, what do you think? What do you think would be a central nervous system toxicity symptom or sign?
The easy way to remember is convented.
Mm-hmm.
Convulsions. That's for the CON. Visual impairment, like visual disturbance, stuff, weird stuff with your sight. What else? Ears, like ringing, stuff that you hear. Nausea. I already mentioned the ears, the tingling, tingling, and
Try to give you the hint there.
dizziness, and
Twitching?
yeah, twitching. Thank you. Yes.
What's the eye? You were doing great. I was pretty impressed, actually. What's the eye?
Might be the only twitching. Might be the only thing that I guess it might be one of the only ones that might give you a little bit of a heads up. It's not like a, yeah. It's better just to stay safe. You might not feel anything.
Yep. Irritability, dizziness, all those, anything that the brain would normally encounter. Good job, Rodrigo. Other things that we need to be aware of is we're starting to head into the decompression sickness era, right? We've heard about it. We may even know somebody that has dealt with it. And I'm going to keep this pretty simple as well. DCS is basically when the bubbles in our bloodstream get larger than our body can handle. Simple enough. That's the simplest way I can define this. What it means is the nitrogen or helium is coming out of your tissue compartments into the bloodstream, and we've ascended too quickly, and we have allowed those bubbles to get too big, and bad stuff happens, is the easy way to think about it. Now, as we kind of look at this, it's interesting to note a couple of things with this, that there's three levels of it. Is first, the first level is going to be DCS level 1, where we start getting a rash, right? The bubbles are trying to come out through the skin. The second level is when we start getting bubbles trapped in places, we start getting pain. The third level is where it gets really severe, where we start getting significant pain, and where those bubbles can start blocking off the heart. They can start blocking off places in the brain. It becomes significant issue, right, as we go through this portion. Now, the other thing to be aware of is it's pretty uncommon to see DCS in the water. Typically, when DCS starts to present, is it typically somewhere in the neighborhood of 14 minutes after a dive. Which leads us, Peyton, you and I are on a boat. We're 38 miles off the coast of Newfoundland. Pick a country, right? I come up And at the 12 to 14 minute mark, I start exhibiting signs of DCS. The radio's not working. We are literally 38 miles on a 10-mile-an-hour boat, so we're 3 hours away from help. Do you put me back in the water to recompress me?
I'll put you on oxygen.
Yeah,
But
I would agree. I wouldn't try to do that. I think it was the limit was if you couldn't get to medical help within 24 hours, that you would just keep giving them O2 and fluids. So yeah, I wouldn't put you in the water in that case.
Why not? Why wouldn't you put me back in the water? It's pressure, right?
If I'm remembering it correctly, I thought that was kind of the book solution of just if there was a chamber or medical within 24 hours, that you would just hold fast on not putting them back in the water just because it was a dangerous concept.
There you go. That's what I was looking for. Don't recompress somebody in the water ever. If they've started to exhibit signs and symptoms, you're starting to head into an area that you have no control over. I don't know about you, but a defibrillator, AED underwater is probably not the best idea in the entire world. CPR and mouth-to-mouth underwater is probably pretty difficult, would be my guess. I've not tried this yet. I'm just spitballing here, but as we got to go through this. So if something were to happen, decompression, recompressing somebody underwater adds an additional level of difficulty, danger, and uncontrollability to a situation that's already negative. Now, let's continue that thought. So we decided, Peyton, that you're not going to put me back in the water, even though and you put me on O2. We've got a 3.5 hour boat ride back, and you look at that O2 bottle, and it's a little O2 bottle, right? It's a nice little L bottle, and it's got about enough gas at 2 liters a minute to last for an hour. At 4 liters per minute, that's a half hour. At 15 liters per minute, it's about 10 minutes. What's the setting we use? Do we ration the gas, or do we slam the gas at full power?
I would say ration it because you also have nitrox tanks on board.
Okay, so we have one for ration. Randy Beckman?
All right.
Ration or slam?
I'd say full bore and work on getting more oxygen there.
Randy L?
I'd probably ration.
Okay, so we got 2 for ration. Okay, Peyton, I've got 2 for ration, 1 for slam it.
Truthfully, I'd be guessing, honestly.
I think we all.
I'm sorry.
I just said I would be guessing because I'm sure that there's a theory that could support either. So I would just be curious what the proper technique would be.
The proper technique is to slam them. Our goal is to help force as much nitrogen out of the system as quickly as humanly possible. Never ration your gas. 15 liters per minute is the appropriate amount of gas to kick up in any situation. You get somebody on the boat and you have to give them O. The appropriate answer is always as much pure O as we possibly can get into them. Never ration, always 15 liters per minute, period. Overall, we're trying to help allow as much nitrogen out of the system as humanly possible. And the best way to do that is, as my blushing bride always says, the solution to pollution is dilution. We're polluted with nitrogen. Well, we're going to dilute it with oxygen. So that is our simple answer to this. So if you ever have that opportunity, now on a safety tip, ask me how I know, there's whenever you get on a dive boat, it is to your advantage to ask a couple of questions. Where is your O2 kit? When is the last time it was checked? May I see it? Do you have a regulator on it? Do you have masks for it? Not a bad thing to ask, right? I can tell you on our boat, we exchange our 2 bottles of O with fresh 2 bottles of O once a month and make sure that there is fresh masks, regulators, and everything needed to be able to put somebody on pure O at any given time. That's our policy. But about 2 years ago, off the Bahamas, which aren't too far from us, there was a dive boat that was about 25 miles offshore. they had somebody come up that started to exhibit symptoms. They were 30 minutes away from the Coast Guard, 40 minutes away from shore. They decided, oh, great, let's go grab the bottle of O that we know is on this boat. The problem is the lock for the O kit had rusted shut.
Oh, shit.
The second part of that was even worse, is nobody knew where the keys were. True story. Look it up in Dan. So being able to access that kind of stuff to your advantage, knowing where it's at to your advantage, and taking the time to say, okay, how do I access this? Where is it at? And what happens if? Make sense? All right. Time to get to meat and potatoes, guys. So as we start choosing gear, what are some of the things that are going to be the most important when we start choosing gear for this dive? Randy from Texas.
That it's in good functioning order, that it's high quality gear.
Absolutely. How about you, Randy Beckman? What's something I'm going to make sure?
Yeah, everything's in proper working order, and that the things are at the right percentages that they're supposed to be.
There you go. One of the things I like to look, I mean, as we're buying new gear, it's going to, hopefully it's going to be reliable gear, right? I would hope that we don't buy a Yugo when we're buying this kind of stuff. But one of the things I like to think about is matching the equipment to the dive objective. Makes a lot of difference, right? As we start thinking about it. Typically, I won't dive twin sets at Blue Heron Bridge, although we do have two of our avid adventurers that are going to, and I've seen them happen before. They're going to dive twin sets at Blue Heron Bridge. It's going to be awesome. They're going to get a lot of cool looks, but it gives them a chance to dial it in, which is awesome. And I really appreciate that, by the way. But we want to match the equipment to the objective. Personally, I would, the time I dive my twins at Blue Heron Bridge is if I was trying to dial them in for whatever reason. I just needed a shallow dive to figure it out. Cool. That's a great use of it. Every day twin sets at the bridge, probably not the best plan. But you want to start thinking simplicity. How do I match the equipment that I'm using for the dive? I don't need to be a Christmas tree, right? My second idea when I'm starting to put this together is, does it fit and is it streamlined? People miss this one huge. Proper fit's pretty important, but streamlining is a huge piece. Rodrigo, are you still here? I don't see him. I think Rodrigo dropped out. Randy, how about streamlining? What have you learned about streamlining in side mount versus back mount?
Well, you're definitely more streamlined in side mount, but trim is a big key in that, and getting your weights adjusted, and your hoses tucked in and secured so that things aren't dangling, and but you're definitely way better off being streamlined and trimmed out.
Absolutely. So as we start thinking streamlining, that helps us in two ways. The first and most important, in my opinion, the second one's pretty important too, but the first one is now we suddenly aren't a safety hazard. Having a bunch of crap hanging off us in different ways, we see this all the time on the reef, where somebody decides that they want to be a lobster hunter, a spear fisherman, and a lionfish hunter all in the same dive, and they want to be a photographer. And they're dragging shit all over the reef, which becomes a safety hazard because they're destroying the reef, which I'm not happy about, but they're also now an entanglement hazard. They're accident waiting to happen. We as tech divers have a very thin safety margin as it is. So the more we can streamline things that they're clean, they're not dangling, the better off we're going to be. The less likely we're going to be tangled up in something. The less likely it's going to be a problem finding something. We're not, okay, which package is this again? Where could it be? Right. So we start thinking the streamline and proper fit to make sure that things are easy to get to, easy to work with, and that we don't become that entanglement hazard on something else, or inability to work our own gear, right? The second part of streamlining as well is I can promise you that a Corvette goes through the slipstream a lot easier than a minivan. Minivans are certainly wonderful for their use, but they're not the most aerodynamic things in the world. Well, as we become more aerodynamic and we start sliding through that slipstream a little bit better, our gas consumption goes down. Have you experienced that, Randy?
Yes, my sac rate is definitely decreased.
Absolutely. So as we start thinking about that, it helps us because we have to dive longer too. The other thing I like to think about as I'm starting to choose my gear is consistency. How is that going to work with the divers that I'm with? We've come up, there's a few kind of hard, fast rules that we use in tech diving. We use a long hose and a short hose, right? We put our short hose on a necklace around our neck. We should be breathing our long hose because that's the one we're going to donate to somebody else. We typically donate the one that people see because we have that chance of being gas mugged and having to give that away. So we do that. We have our regulators come over our right shoulder, right? We use an 84-inch hose for our long hose. That way we've got plenty of gas to be, or length to be able to hand off to somebody around us. We have our inflator on our left side. So we do some fairly standardized ideas through this process that we're consistent. As we start making changes to our equipment, I can promise you that the wrong time to make changes to your equipment are when you're getting ready to jump off the boat. Ask me how I know. Years ago when Nikki and I were first jaunting into the world of technical diving, we were so excited, and we were doing some of our first technical dives off the boat. I had somebody that we knew that said, "Hey, I never carry my SMB like you're carrying it off that back ring. I put my SMB on my Deco bottle." And this person had more dives than me, and I made the mistake of whilst on the boat saying, "Okay, well, that seems like a good idea. Let's try that." So I took my my secondary SMB and my secondary spool, and I put it on my Deco bottle. By the way, I will never do that again. We got down, and Nick and I were at 150 feet. And one of the drills that this person asked us to do was to switch our Deco bottles one between each other. And it was a pretty heavy current. It was about a 4-knot current. It was freaking ripping, dude. And it was negative visibility because they've been dumping the locks at Okeechobee. So it was red tide going through as well. So crap viz as well. Well, it came up at that time for me to launch the SMB. Now, I was the designated SMB launcher. I grabbed my SMB, I grabbed my reel, and I let a little too much out, let it up. It went around my wrist and started dragging me to the surface. We were at 150 feet, and I got to 90 feet and about 75 to 100 feet ahead of everybody else before I could get my knife off and cut it free and set my SMB away. But by this point, I had no idea where Nikki and our other diver were at. I clipped off my reel that I still had. I went looking for my SMB where I knew it was always supposed to be. Nikki and I hadn't changed our Deco top battles back. Nikki now had 3 SMBs. I had 1, and it was floating at the surface somewhere. Heavy current, 4 to 5 foot waves that day that were kicking along at about 3 seconds. What do I do? Luckily, I happened to come across another diver in the water, and he was diving a rebreather. So thankfully, that's what happened. And I was able to tell him, "Hey, can you launch your SMB? I need to go up." And he's like, "Okay, cool." So he launched. We got back on the boat. Even better is I put my name and my phone number on my SMB, and the boat had come along, found that SMB with my name on it, said, "Oh, this is Benjamin. See, it says Benjamin on it." And they pulled it on the boat, deflated it, rolled it up for me, and said, "Hey, you might be missing something." I was like, "Sweet, I got my SMB back." So making big changes is the point here. Don't make changes the day before. Make the changes the day prior to the dive. Review those changes. And I always like to say, never make more than a 10% change of anything at any given time. Change little things, not big things. If you're going to change your weight, no more than 10% at a time. If you're used to diving 20 pounds, drop 2 pounds, right? Or add 2 pounds. Little things at a time. Change one element at a time. Test that equipment before critical dives, and always keep it in mind, does this fit the team concept? Will my buddy be able to figure this out if something were to happen to me? Make sense, guys?
Yeah.
The other thing I like to think about is, how's its reliability, and do I have a redundance? We've all heard this a million times. I'm going to say it anyway. 1 is none, 2 is 1. As we start going through this process, we want to make sure we have a knife that's reachable with each hand. That's probably not going to be the same knife. In my side mount rig, oddly enough, I keep a knife in the center of my chest so I can get it with either hand. But as Randy will attest, I also keep one on my left wrist, very quickly, easy to get to. And I also keep one on my right hip that I can get to with my left hand. So I keep 3 knives in easy function. And I can tell you the one on my wrist has saved my ass twice. I've had 2 oh shits over the course of diving that knife it's paid for itself and owes no rent. That's for sure. But we want to make sure that we have a redundancy to everything we're doing that's usable. What happens if my mask breaks? I was in the Yellowstone Lake swimming out to with a diver that had come out to be guided in Yellowstone Lake. We were almost a half mile offshore doing a surface swim out to our drop point. We got out there and I said, okay, let's go ahead and put our masks on and jump in or descend. And he's like, I lost my mask. And I'm like, seriously, dude? And I felt so bad. And he's like, oh man, I got to swim all the way back to shore. And I reached into my left pocket and pulled out my spare mask. I'm like, you lose this mask, you owe me a new mask, dude. And he's like, I love you technical divers. You always have extra. I says, that's my redundancy for me, dude. But having that redundancy definitely comes into play. Having an extra, mask straps break, masks flood and become unusable, right? For one reason or another. While I haven't had a lot of experience with masks breaking on me, I have had them break. I had one break on me in Hawaii, the mask strap. I did 3/4 of the dive without a mask strap till I realized, oh, wait a minute, I've got a spare mask in my left pocket. And I reached in and switched it out. It was no big deal. But I actually forgot about it. It was kind of funny. But having a redundancy, definitely to your advantage. Make sense?
Yes, a lot.
Awesome. The other thing we need to think about redundancy and as well is our gas. What happens if I have a catastrophic gas failure in my Deco cylinder? Do I have enough gas on my back to get me to the surface? So as we generally as we plan our big dives, we want to make sure that our cylinder is capable of holding about 50% more than the total amount of your dive plan consumed based upon your dive depth, time, and sac rate. So we want to make sure we have plenty in there, that we can handle this, that if something happens, I can still off gas from my back gas safely and still have a reserve. Because what happens if I have a catastrophic failure and my buddy suddenly needs gas? Well, now we're screwed. Make sense? The other things we want to choose and start making that idea of is what kind of cylinders we're going to use, right? We have the basic 2 choices are aluminum and steel. Now, there are some weirdos out there that are using these spun fiber tanks. Don't do that. That is just an explosion waiting to happen. And I know I have a friend that swears by his 5,000 PSI spun fiber tanks. I will not fill them. I will not touch them. And I won't let him on the boat with them. They scare the shit out of me. So keeping in that idea, aluminum or steel, there's definitely advantages to each, right? If you're on a Caribbean dive and you're looking to drop some weight and you're not going too crazy, aluminum twins, not a horrible idea. But we also have to remember the reason we eventually went over to steel tanks, because the problem is as we start diving aluminum tanks, they become buoyant at the end of a dive. Your average aluminum 80 adds about 3 pounds of positive buoyancy per tank towards the end of your dive. And that can be a lot more difficult to manage as you start going through this process. So steel tanks tend to be the secret sauce to this process. They never become positive. Where the negative portion of them is Randy, are those 2 steel tanks light?
No, definitely not.
No, not at all. So definitely you're dealing with a lot more weight. Now the good news is whilst underwater, an HP 100, for example, is about 4.5 pounds negative when it's full, and at empty, it's about 1 pound to 1/2 pound negative buoyancy at depth. But the problem is unfortunately, at some point you got to get out of the water, no matter how much so making that choice of what works best for you, right? The next decision to start making is, do I have enough capacity to do what I want to do, right? I can tell you in our closet, most of our twin sets are all HP 100s. I do have some LP 108s in there as well. I don't dive them very often. But I also have a pair of twin 117s. Those sons of guns are heavy, but It also gives me 34 cubic feet more of a back gas so I can extend my dives out or do a little bit deeper dive. As we start thinking about that as well, what about our Deco cylinders? Now, typically, at this level, we're looking at a 30 or a 40 cubic foot Deco cylinder, and that's enough for what we're doing. It's enough for contingency. It's enough for that. But as we start getting bigger dives, and my trimix dives, for a light trimix where I'm only doing 200 feet for 30, 40 minutes, I'll carry 2 40 cubic foot tanks. That's a ton of gas. But if I'm going to stay more significant amount of time, or I'm going to start doing deeper, then I start thinking, okay, wait a minute, that 40 cubic feet is not enough capacity. And I start increasing those up, and I'll go to 80 cubic foot tanks. So we start thinking about, do I have the capacity? If I don't, what does that mean to me, right? How do I work with that? Make sense, guys? Make sense? Are we all still awake? Does everybody need a bio break? We're good? Perfect.
Good.
All right. So we're getting into this idea that we're having to carry Deco cylinders, and we've got a fair amount of information to get through. So we might go a little late tonight. I apologize, guys. I was a little long-winded tonight. So one of the things we get to do is we've got to make sure that our Deco cylinders are clear. How do we do that? Because no longer are we the only ones responsible for looking at this. We want our buddies to look at this. We want to make sure that our caveman brain that we're going to get to when we on this Deco is able to understand this as clearly as we possibly can. So marking a Deco cylinder is huge. Now I like to mark and suggest that you're going to mark your Deco cylinder in 4 to 5 places, and you're going to make it very, very, very clear. I like to mark both sides of my Deco cylinder at the top, at the bottom, and on the butt. Let me show you. So this is a Deco cylinder. You can see one on the left. They very clearly, this is auction, 20-foot max depth. They've also marked at the top. This is a different Deco cylinder on the right here, these 4 pictures, but you can see the butt's marked, the bottom is marked, and the top is marked. Make it very clear. What is your maximum operating depth? At what mod? How does that look? So very clearly, as I switch over, what does this look like? The other thing you can do that makes it really a nice little slick thing you can do, you can also add your Deco plan right to your cylinder. Nice and easy. There's a Deco plan written on this. I'm going to be 120, 120, 60, 60, 40. There's my switch, 40, 30, 30, 20, 20, right? There's my whole Deco plan. Easy enough. Safety stop, final. Easy enough. But mark your Deco cylinder very clearly. Now, we do have people here that are currently living in Europe. I would be willing to bet, Peyton, that they use a different unit of measurement in Europe. They do. So it's important. Make sure that when you are marking your Deco cylinder, that you also mark the unit of measurement. If you're using feet, don't be afraid to use FT. Make it nice and clear. Remember, as we're at depth, we're in caveman brain, and caveman brain ain't smart, right? So if you're using meters, make sure to mark it with. It's one of the reasons I am not crazy about the picture on the left-hand side here. Let me show you again. And hopefully, Peyton, you and your buddy are able to see these. I know we had an issue earlier. I'm not crazy about this one on the left because they said auction 20. Well, hopefully we know that we look at auction, that we realize that's not 20 meters, right? We hope, but we want to make sure that we're very as clear as humanly possible, because I can promise you, caveman brain isn't always smart. So make sure you're very clear with how you mark your gear. 20 feet, 20 meters, whatever it is. There are definitely plenty of examples where that was a problem. And somebody got injured because they chose the wrong gas. That's the highest count for technical divers having issues or accidents is wrong gas. The next thing we want to look at is we want to make sure we're choosing the right regulator. There's a lot of good choices out there, a nice balanced diaphragmatic regulator is my personal choice, one that adjusts for depth and one that's designed for a low work of breathing and has a good flow to it, right? The old regulator that we first started open water with, probably not the best choice. Certainly you want to look at the flow rates and the dynamics of the regulators you're choosing for decompression. The other regulator that gets missed more than everything, and I see this all the time, somebody comes to me for a tech class, they've got a new Deco regulator, or not a new, they have a Deco regulator, and I say, where did you get that? He says, well, it was in the box of stuff when I was doing open water diving, and I just decided to use this. Well, there's a lot of problems with that. The first one that comes to mind is that if it wasn't good enough for you to use currently, why would it be good enough to use for your Deco, the thing that's going to save your life? Probably not the best plan. The other thing about it is as we choose a Deco regulator, we want to make sure that it doesn't just conform to Rule 40, that it's built for that higher level of oxygen, right? We want to make sure, for example, I like the Atomic M1s. I've had several of them rebuilt to pure O. They've changed the O-rings, they've changed the dynamics, they've changed the grease in them, and they are prepared and ready to be used with pure oxygen. That's what they're designed for. They're not going to become toxic. They're not going to become problems. We want to make sure that we choose a good Deco regulator that's designed to be a Deco regulator. Make sense? And it's pretty easy. We can order them. Dive Right makes some wonderful ones that come out of the box designed for up to 100% O. Hollis makes a couple of them. Halcyon, you can get them as well. So there's plenty of choices on them. It's not hard. It just depends on what you want to do. I'm a little more bougie. I like the Atomic M1 and have it rebuilt. But the Dive Right O2 regulator is about $500. It's a great regulator. It's a pre-built for 100% O. You can get a Halcyon one for about $650. You can get the Hollis 150LX for about $550 or $600. The M1 is $1,100. So it depends on you. I like the nicer regulator. That's me, and that's my choice. So some things to think about. Other key considerations as you're starting to put your gear together: how is this going to affect your profile and your streaming? How is it going to affect your buoyancy control? Where am I balancing things? The number one thing we're trying to get to is the point where we're able to relax in the water column without thinking about it. So guys, when you guys go to the Blue Heron Bridge tomorrow, one of the things I would like you guys to try is get into trim about 1.5 to 2 feet off the bottom, in frog dive position, hands in front, grab your wrists, put your knees together, put your ankles together, close your eyes and breathe normally, and count to 30. And the reason I ask you to do that is you will find very quickly how well you're balanced. Am I tipping left? Am I tipping forward? Am I tipping back? Your overall goal is to get to that point where you're well balanced, not off, right? The more you can be well balanced, the less you have to move. The easier this dive will be. When you can relax in position, the better off you're going to be. So try that tomorrow and see how you balance and move through this process. Other things to think about is how big is your wing, right? You're suddenly moving to a realm where you're carrying a lot of crap. With my twin 117s and two Deco bottles that are 40 cubic foot each with regs, that's 150 pounds worth of weight. I weighted. I was curious. If I go up to twin 80s, it adds another 40 pounds of weight. So now I'm closing in on 200 pounds of crap that I'm carrying. Do I have enough lift in my bag on my back to be able to do that? Make sense? What questions do we have? I've talked again for a really long time, and we're almost to the fun stuff. Randy for Texas?
No questions here.
Good. Randy Beckman?
I don't have any questions currently.
Awesome. Now, some of the cool things I would definitely consider carrying. We're going to need everybody to have wrist slates because you're going to need to write your dive plan down somewhere. Pro tip on your wrist slates: white duct tape you can pick up, or yellow duct tape you can pick it up at Home Depot. Cost you about $6. and a marker. Don't write on your dive slate itself. Put a piece of duct tape down and write on the duct tape. Gentlemen, when you guys come in tomorrow, I will show you my slate. I'll show you. I've got it still set up for my last dives last week. So you can take a look at mine and see exactly what I'm talking about. But on your wrist slates, you can absolutely put a piece of duct tape on it. When you're done, you just pull the duct tape off, write it up, and throw it in the trash. Recycle it if you like. That way you're not having to use the magic eraser or bleach or scrub it off. It just makes it a lot nicer. Other cool things you can do, a set of wet slates in your pocket goes a long way, especially on a long, complicated dive when things change. You're able to pull that out, write note to your buddy, and give it to him, right? Or you can also, if there's an emergency, you can write an emergency note on it, send it up with your SMB so the crew can pull your wet slate and they can say, oh, he got his leg bit off by a shark. Cool. Okay, we might want to deal with that, whatever it is, right? But you can write things on that. Other things that you guys need to make sure you carry, SMBs. I carry 2 SMBs always because 1 is done, 2 is 1. When I'm diving with you guys, I dive 2 different colors SMBs. And I do that intentionally. I've got my traditional red and I have a bright yellow. The reason I carry the bright yellow is if there's an emergency with one of you guys, I will launch my yellow SMB, and oddly enough, it's a self-inflator, so it's pretty cool. And I will grab a hold of you and I will launch that. And the captain, I promise you, when we get to the surface, we'll be within 20 feet of that SMB. I let the dive crew know ahead of time. Remember I talked about last night that communication is the least done thing in all technical diving. Talk to people, talk to the deck crew. If there's an emergency, you'll see my yellow SMB, get to me because there's a problem. So if they see my yellow SMB go to the surface, they know there's an oh shit, I'm coming to the surface as quickly as I can, safely, of course. And they're going to be within 20 feet of me at any given time, right? They also know that if they see my yellow SMB and I also have an orange SMB on it and I've made bunny ears, they're not only going to get to within 20 feet of me, but the dive master is going to slap a tank on and they're going to get their ass in the water and come down and try and figure out what the problem is. So I've communicated ahead of time with that dive crew. They know here's the signs and if there's a problem. And well, knock on wood, we pray that there's never a problem. I would rather be prepared for a problem than not. The best way to prepare for a problem is preparation, right? So that's what they look like. And I can also, with those rabbit ears, I can write a note. I can set it up on the SMB. So as they're grabbing that SMB, they can see, oh, there's a note. Need more gas. Need whatever. Trapped. Whatever it is. I can write that on the SMB and I can set it up. So having a set of wet slates, definitely to your advantage as you go through this process. Make sense?
Yep. I
don't know that we need to go through different kinds of computers. I think we're probably all on about the same computer, except for IBM Randy. He is on an Apex, which is a great computer. I thought that was a great computer. I just had too many computers. I've been through a lot, that's for sure. So the next piece of this is dive planning. So let's get into subsurface a little bit and take a look at this. So as we start getting into subsurface, which is a great piece of planning software, they all work pretty similarly. Subsurface just tends to be a little bit more visual. The first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that we're getting in and we've got all the basics premises set up. So I'm actually going to minimize out of this. Let's see how I get out of this. Why can't I minimize it? That's interesting. Let me stop sharing for a minute and see if it lets me minimize it. Interesting. It wouldn't let me minimize when it was being shared. Huh. That's interesting. We all love computers till we don't, right? Come on. There it is. All right. So sharing entire screen. Oh, I know that because I was sharing window, not a screen. Where'd my subsurface go? There it is. Okay, perfect. Can you guys see my subsurface?
Nope.
All righty. So we're going to make sure we go into the preferences and we're going to take a look through the preferences. Make sure everything, language is correct. That's pretty easy. What units are we going to use? Liters is something I always use. It makes my life easier instead of cubic feet. But I'm also going to use depth for feet for you guys, PSI instead of bar, Fahrenheit because I'm a damn Yankee, and pounds for weight. Is going to go through this. Equipment, I can put different stuff in there. My media, just go through and make sure, take a look at this, and make sure everything fits in your profile of what you want. Once we get done with that, we can go in and say, okay, I'm going to go to log and plan a dive. We're the exciting part, boys.
Hey Ben, what dive software is this?
This is called
Sup. Oh, subsurface there. Okay, I see it in the corner. All right.
And it's free.
It's free.
Cool. So I'm getting a reverb on that. There we go. Okay. So this is free software. It's a freeware. It's actually open source. So if you're one of those computer geniuses and want to play with this, absolutely. Now let's take a look at some of the just basic settings down here. The first one you can see I'm set to open circuit. I'm absolutely using the Buellman. If I wanted to use VPM, which I don't know why anybody would want to use VPM, but that's an option. And I'm setting it to 5085. We'll just take that down to 5080. We'll just make our dives just a little safer. There we go. So now that's set up. I can also set up my sac rate. I can tell you my bottom sac rate, I know for a fact, is 8 liters per minute. So I set it to 10. My Deco sac rate is more like 5 to 6 liters per minute. I set it at 8 to make sure that I've got plenty of time. I allow myself a problem-solving time at 4, and I set my sac rate to a factor of 4. That's my effort. That gives me a little bit more. My effort's never above 3. My bottom PPO2, 1.4, and my Deco PPO2, 1.6. Easy enough. All pretty basic stuff. You can also set the basic ascent rates are all going to be pretty straightforward. You can actually set them to different levels. Let's just keep all our ascent rates at 30 feet per minute. We can use a 59 feet per minute as our descent. That's a pretty fast descent. So the first thing we want to do is we got to figure out what we want to do. So let's say we want to do a 150-foot dive. So we're going to 150 feet and we're going to stay at 150 feet. So we have to put each piece of the puzzle into the mix, right? So part one is what depth I want to go to. Okay, how long is it going to take me to get there? We'll say 4 minutes. And it gives you a visual representation. It says at 60 feet per minute, it's going to take, if you go 4 feet, take 4 minutes, that's about right. You're going to be fine. That's not too fast. I'm going to be at 150 feet. How long do I want to be there? Okay, 25 minutes. That's my goal. So we get a couple new pieces of information that we haven't talked about before. My first one is my final depth, okay? My final depth is going to be, and I'm going to remain at that depth. How long am I going to be that? So that's my duration of time. It's going to take me 4 minutes to get there, and I'm going to be there for 25 minutes. So now we're adding a new piece of the puzzle called runtime. The runtime is the cumulative time of the dive. So my runtime starts out, when I get to 150 feet, my runtime will be 4 minutes. When I leave the bottom, my runtime will now be 29 minutes because I was spending 25 minutes at depth plus 4 minutes to get there. 4 plus 25 equals 29. Clear as mud, guys? Yes, no, maybe so?
Good so far.
All right. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Now, there is other things we can add to this. If we are diving altitude, you can add that in. We're all diving in seawater, so I'm going to change that over because that's a big portion of the calculation instead of anything else. So make sure we're in that at 0 foot elevation because we're diving on the coast here. The next piece of this is how big are my tanks? Well, if I'm diving twin sets, we know that one HP 100 is 12.1 liters. Well, I'm diving twin sets, so that's how big? 24.2, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. 24.2. So that'll start giving me a gas calculation that's a little bit more accurate. Now I just need to define my gas. We're going to cross. I can tell it I'm going to be at this level. I'm going to dive 24%. Is that what I think that's what we agreed upon? 24%. Boom. Doing good so far. But what about my helium? We know that I want to reduce that down, so I want to put 35% in there. Did you notice something when I put in that 35% helium? What happened to my deco time? Did it increase or decrease? 0 helium, 101 minutes total. Now I haven't added a deco mix in there, by the way, guys. 35 minutes, 35%. All of a sudden, I added 14 minutes to my total dive time. Now, again, realize I do not have a Deco blend programmed in yet. So there we go. So 115 minutes. That's a reasonably long dive. That's closing in on 2 hours. Do I have enough gas for this dive? Well, according to this, I should end with about 50% of my gas based upon my current sack rate. So I'm doing okay. But do I really want to spend almost 2 hours down for 29 minutes of bottom time? I'm literally 4, 7, 11, 20, 85. I'm 85 minutes of Deco for a 29-minute dive. Well, let's talk about that accelerated Deco. So we can go over, there's a little plus sign. Do you guys see that here? I'm going to add another tank. And I can click over here. Come on. And I can choose an AL40, 5.5 liters. What happens if I magically add 50% gas? Bam, 115 minutes down to 63 minutes. Is that significant? Yes? No?
It's a big change.
Big change. Let's take a look at it. Now, just out of curiosity, I dive at 80%. We're diving at 80% GF high. What happens if I do 85 as my grading factor? Remember, we're at 63 minutes. For a reduction of 5% safety, we lost how much time in our total dive?
2 minutes.
Is the loss of safety worth 2 minutes?
No.
Absolutely. I don't think so either, right? So as you kind of go through this, you can make these determinations. And maybe in this case, it's just a nice, easy dive. Maybe you're okay with being losing 5% to gain that. But as you start looking through this, it's interesting to start playing with these numbers and getting an idea, what happens if? What happens if I change that to a little bit more aggressive profile? What happens if I say, okay, I'd rather do a 70% gas? Well, I lost 3 minutes, but look at my Deco stops, right? I'm back gassing, off gassing at 50 feet, 40 feet. So I've increased my gas tension as well. What happens if I get crazy? I'm certified up for 100%. What happens if I use an 80%? I actually gained some of that time back. Was it really worth the time? And look at all this time I'm going to spend off gassing on back gas. Now you can start seeing the efficiency level of the 50%. So typically for dives like this, 50% is about right. You can certainly do a 60%. You can see I lost a little bit of time, but I also, and my first Deco stop is at 50 feet, which is fine. So I want to try and off gas at the correct level. What happens if we did 50%? I gained 2 minutes back, but my first Deco stop became 70 feet. What does that, if I'm doing my first off gassing at 70 feet, what does that mean to the tension, the tissue tension as I'm ascending? Is it softening lightening the tissue tension? God, I can't talk tonight. Lightening the tissue tension, or is it increasing the tissue tension? Texas Randy?
I'm not sure what you mean by softening the tissue tension.
So is it making my body work harder or making my body work less?
For a deeper stop?
Yes.
I don't know. I'd be guessing.
Oh, that's fine. And that's kind of what I'm looking for, is to think your way through it. It's gonna lighten the workload for my body. It's allowing me to off gas a little bit more slowly. It's making my body work less in this. And that's one of the things I want you guys to think about is what is the impact of a decompression on my body? And how fast am I decompressing? So if I can decompress a little bit slower, I'm making my body work less. It's the same idea as which is easier, to run on a flat road or run up a hill, right? Same idea. If I'm running up a hill, I'm working a lot harder. I'm putting my body through a lot more stress, right? So as I go through this, it becomes that three-legged stool again. We're balancing out how we're doing our decompression in such a way that it either could be really hard on our body. We're more tired after the end of the dive. We subject ourselves to potential other issues that could creep in, or are we allowing ourselves to a little bit more gentle time? And by a little bit deeper decompression, we're allowing ourselves a little bit more time, right? Our first decompression gas switch is at 70 feet, and we're breathing that decompression gas from 70 feet up to 0 instead of coming up to 50 feet and starting that process. So be gentle on yourselves. Allow yourselves a little slower time. Don't be afraid. And look, the funny thing is by going to a 50%, we increase our total run time by 2 minutes. We made our body a little happier. We increased our safety factor a little bit by going to a 50%. So I encourage you, as you play with this, don't go crazy and say, okay, I'm going to do 100%. Well, cool. I added 2 minutes to my overall time, but look at all this time that I'm trying to get to my first Deco blend. Be gentle on yourselves. But there you go. That's basically how we do it. It's not complicated. The next question I might ask myself is, how do I write this down? What does that look like as I put this on my slate? And I will show you. It'll just take me a second to get over to a WordPad. Let's see. And in case you wonder, that's the grandson. He is the cutest little turkey ever. Very proud of him. I have 2 grandsons and 2 granddaughters. All right, so this is our plan straight from that I just copied straight across. Easy peasy. Here's all we're looking for you to add in. You don't have to add the up and down symbols. That was accidental copy. But what you do need to do is you need to put on your slate your depth, how long you're going to be there, and what's your run time, and what gas will you be on. Now, obviously, you don't probably need to put on the first gas because you have no choice. You have 2 gases, but you do need to put on your second gas. What I do on mine, and I'm not able to figure out how to do this on this, is I put a box around the 70 feet where I'm making my first Deco slab. I make it extremely clear, and I wish I knew how to draw a line on this. I unfortunately am not that smart with this, apparently. I know there's a drawing tool in here somewhere. But I go through and that works. I draw a box around it so it becomes extremely clear. I know that I'm getting 70 feet. That's my gas switch. And if I had another gas switch at, say, 30 feet, which would be 80%, I'd do the same thing again. I'd put another box around that so it becomes very, very clear. This is my next gas. No question in my mind. This is what's going on. Here's where I'm at. Does that make sense, guys?
Why are some of the depths separated?
I don't know. What do you mean?
Like we've got depth 70 feet, 3 minutes, 70 feet, 1 minute.
Travel time. There you go. So as we start this dive, we're going to go down to 150 feet. It's going to take us 4 minutes to get there. And then we're going to be there for 25 minutes. At the 29-minute run time, we're going to leave the bottom, and it's going to take us 3 minutes to get to 70 feet. Once we get to 70 feet, we're going to be there for 1 minute while we switch over to our 50% gas. From that point, we're going to ascend at the 33-minute mark from 70 feet to 40 feet. It's going to take us a minute to get to 40 feet. Once we get to 40 feet, we're going to remain there for 2 minutes. We're going to ascend at the 36-minute mark to 30 feet, which shouldn't take us any time, a non-calculable time, and we're going to remain at 30 feet for 4 minutes. At the 40-minute runtime mark, we're going to leave that 30-foot point, and we're going to come up to 20 feet, which shouldn't take us any time at all. And we're going to remain at 20 feet for 20 minutes. And we can leave the 20-foot mark at 60 minutes of runtime. Texas Randy, did that explain that?
Yeah, the 0 minutes was throwing me off.
Yeah, it's confusing. I get that, and definitely cognizant of that. That's the amount of time it's going to take. Because it's calculated in seconds, it doesn't calculate it. But it ends up being a calculation that it adds in over the course of time. So, and if you don't want to add those in, you can make your slate simpler. I encourage you to start out getting good at writing it like this. Write it lengthwise and make it ultra clear. Now, here's the second part of this, of dive planning. What happens if? Have I said that once or twice, the what if? I can tell some of you guys are a little bit of daredevil. So what happens if I stay 5 minutes longer? So dive plan 1 is right here. We're done. We've got dive plan 1 in the books, ready to go. But we also need to do our first contingency plan, which is our +5. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. I can just come right over this box, +5. So if I stay for 5 minutes longer, look what happens. All of a sudden, we went from 61 minutes to 73 minutes. For a 5-minute additional time, all of a sudden, I've got 10 minutes more of Deco. Is that significant? Peyton, is that pretty significant? Did I lose you guys? Bueller?
No, we got you.
Okay, cool. Is that pretty significant to add 11 minutes for 5 minutes of additional bottom time?
Yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
So quickly, it adds up fast, right? How many windows do I have open? I'm trying to find my one window here. I've got like 18 windows open. There it is, Google Doc. So we've got dive plan 1 in the books. Let's go ahead and move this down. Oop, I didn't do what I wanted to do. There you go. So dive plan main. Okay, let's move down. +5 dive plan. So there we go. So now we've got dive plan number 2. This is our +5. If something happens, instead of being down for 61 minutes, now we're down for 73 minutes. That's our contingency number 1. If we decide we suddenly see a mermaid riding a whale shark, and we say we want to stay another 5 minutes, now we know what that's going to look like. And we can gas plan based upon that as well. But we need to make sure we go one step farther with this. Whenever we do our technical dive planning, we always do +5, and then we also do a ++5. What that means to you is what happens if I go a little deeper and I stay a little longer. So what happens if I go to 155 feet? Now I've got my third dive. So we copy that. Go back over to our Word document here. Maybe. There it goes. There we go. Plus 5. And we can see now we're at 75 minutes. So we can take our idea, we can say, okay, can I carry enough gas if I do an ultra contingency of 5 + 5? Well, that's 75 minutes. Let's go back to the dive planning software. We can look at it. Okay, well, the first portion of the dive is going to cost me 2,100 PSI. In my little 40 cubic foot tank, I'm going to go through 50% of my gas. Can I do that dive? Yes, no? Randy Beckman?
I'm going to say you're pushing the limits because you still got a plan for your team member.
Absolutely. So you're on this one, you're there, but it's definitely close. Absolutely. Right. We want to make sure we're carrying at least 50% gas to cover for a contingency emergency, right? We no longer work on just pure rule of thirds. We're now working on contingency plus team member. So we're there. I mean, we still got 2,100 PSI in this, but we're down to 1,500 PSI on our Deco. It might be at this point, worth considering a different blend, or not a different blend, but a different size cylinder to make sure we're cognizant of that. But we're not quite there. We're at the limit. Be aware. Factors that could change this that you need to be aware of. What happens if? Anybody ever measure your sac rate when they're panicked? Anybody have an idea what happens to your sac rate when you panic?
It would
Like
go up.
doubles.
More than. So the fun part about panic is panic doesn't always show. Panic can also be just between your ears. A bunch of years ago, when I was much newer diver and not as smart, I'd taken a solo class, and I decided that solo diving was for me, and I liked diving deep in cold reservoirs by myself. Cool stuff, right? But I was trained and I was equipped for it. I was doing a dive at 108 feet at a reservoir that was at 6,000 foot elevation. Water temp was about 38 degrees. And I was about 20 minutes into my dive, and all of a sudden, something yanked the regulator out of my mouth. Kid you not. Scared the crap out of me. And all of a sudden, because problems always happen in pairs, right? My dive light died at the exact same time. Now, if you've ever dove a reservoir or a lake, you realize that at 108 feet, it is pitch freaking black. It is a black cat at midnight type of dive. And so without light, man, sometimes you won't even be able to see the way up. You'll hope you can, but sometimes you can't. It's thick enough. So being a good, well-trained diver, I reached over and I tried to pull my regulator, and it was caught on something, but I couldn't see what it was. No big deal. I reached down, found my safety second, breathed on that. I still had my pony bottle, so no big deal, but I was still in the kind of, oh my God, what's going on here? Pulled my regulator, still wasn't coming out. Found my spare light, pulled it out, found out that my regulator had gotten caught in a tree. I was in an underwater forest. Pulled my regulator out of the crust of the tree, tested it, all was good, put it in my mouth, cleared it, put my safety second away, found my light. Turned out I had a cheapo light I bought from Amazon, never do that. Ask me why I know. And I turned the bezel and it turned all the way back on, and my main light came back on. So I put my backup light away, and it really was about that fast. And if you'd watched me, I was cool as a cucumber. Well, no big deal. Probably a minute and a half tops of issue. But it was the first time I'd had an oh shit where something had yanked my regulator away, and I had to start thinking my way through the situation, right? And the scenarios that go through your mind are not good, right? You're just like, oh shit, what I saw my dive computer later. Had a Perdix. My average sac rate at that point was about 8 to 9 psi per minute was where I was at, which is great for a dry suit diver. It's freaking fantastic, right? My sac rate changed from 9 psi per minute to 37 psi per minute for the next 5 to 10 minutes. And I promise you, I was not acting like a track star. I was like, oh, right? There was no fast movements. There was no great effort going on here. It was all between my ears. So your brain controls a lot of this. The tension in your body controls a lot of this. And in a panic situation, typically your sac rate will triple to quadruple. So be aware as you're planning gas, if you have an emergency, you will go through a lot more gas than you think you're going through. So as you go through this process, be aware you're going to rip. If something does happen, it's time to think, okay, am I still within my gas plan? Have I planned appropriately? And start reviewing that very closely. Because as I said at the beginning, there's a lot of things that have a large margin of error. No gas at the bottom, not a large margin for error as you go through this. So that's what dive planning looks like. We need to go through and we start planning this out. How much gas do I have? Do I have enough gas for my primary dive? Do I have enough gas for my +5? Do I have enough gas for my +5? I encourage you guys, as you're building your dive plans for these dives, plan your contingency dives first, because if you cannot do your contingency dive, you can't do your primary dive. And while we pray and knock on wood and say the rosary and pray to Buddha and whatever other hopeful method that you use to get you through challenge situations, I have yet to have Buddha, Allah, or Christ come down and give me share gas with me. So plan for your contingency. They do happen. While we pray for them not to, they absolutely are a thing, and go through that process. So contingency is your number one priority. Where that contingency goes is on the third page of your risk slates. When you are convinced that you can do your dive number 3, your +5, write that one out first, and then return back to your dive for your +5, and then return to your primary and put them in that order. Because like I said, if you can't do your contingency, your primary is useless. You are an accident waiting to happen, and at some point you'll get the opportunity to be a starring feature of a Dan article. I pray you never find that. So we all want our 5 minutes of fame. Dan article is probably not the best place to choose that. All right, guys, what questions do you have? We went through a lot on dive planning. What did we learn?
Hey, Ben.
Yes, sir.
So prior to doing these dives, are we going to show up at the dive shop and use that software?
Absolutely.
Sorry, I missed that. What'd you say?
I would encourage you to download it now. Handy.
Oh yeah, okay.
To download it. The other one I would encourage everybody to have is the oh, you know what? Why don't you mute your mic? Let's see. I do. Oh, cool. Get started. All right. Oh, cool. All right. I like Apple, apparently. Let's see, window. Can everybody see my my multi-deco now?
Yes.
All right. I have not used multi-deco in this fashion. I use it on my iPhone, but it looks pretty similar. So this is multi-deco and what it actually looks like. And actually you can see that I had a dive plan going here. So the first thing we're going to do is just pop in and make sure the configuration is correct. We're using open circuit, Buellman, our gradient factors. Let's see, 50%. There we go. I like to add that O2 can become narcotic. It's pretty rare and pretty unusual for that to happen. Salt, I'm using liters for gas volume. And I've got everything else in there. Looks good. From this point out, now I can go through and I can decide what's my depth. So we're going to do a 150-foot dive for 25 minutes. We're going to use 2440 and hit save. Boom, there we go. Now there's everything we need there. Now we can go over to our Deco blends and we can decide, okay. Let's see. Delete. 50%. Easy peasy. There's the dive I want to do. Calculate. Here's my dive plan. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. And it came up pretty close, right? Runtime 52 minutes. Overall, there's now we've got a dive down in here. We can go through and hit the details, and it'll give us 0 foot elevation. 21% is our CNS toxicity. So we're well within OT units. OT units, 300 is our number we're looking to stay out. Deco zone is in the 100-foot range. Gas density, 4.2 grams per liter. Gas we're using is 2440. And then the gas we're going to use 2,181 liters of that for that. And then we're going to use 643 liters for this. I do everything in liters, and that makes actually sense. Twin sets hold about 5,800, 5,900 liters. I'll have to look it up in a minute, but about 5,900 liters of gas. So we can tell that that's less than 50%. So there we go. That's how you can copy it to clipboard and get that information. But it gives you all the information that you need right here. Other cool things about multi-deco, you also have some other cool tools, equivalent depth mod. You've got your best blend for depth. You got a mix calculator. I use the mix calculator all the freaking time. It's awesome. So you can pop in here and get a good idea, and it'll get you in the ballpark. I'm still not a great fan of it because it truncates the numbers. But this is how you use multi-deco. And I believe it's $49 for life. I must have large numbers set up or something. There we go, 150. Partial pressure is 1.4. We're going to use trimix. And it's saying 2517 is the best blend for 150 feet. I significantly disagree because it's truncating that number. 2530 is significantly more appropriate. So just be aware, it'll get you close in there. And this is absolutely a workable mix. You'll have a much better time with 2530. So that's some of my issues with some of the dive planning software. But that's how you use it. It's pretty straightforward and easy. Like I said, just hit calculate and boom. It doesn't take a genius to do this, that's for sure.
Can you go back to that calculation one real quick? So is that showing that it's got you not starting your 50% until 60 feet?
Correct. No, 70 feet right there. Yeah, 60 feet. You're right. It's calculating a little differently, and there's a setting that I'm missing somewhere in there. I'll go through and play with it to figure out what I'm missing, but I'm definitely missing some. But it's starting at 50, 60 feet. I mean.
Hey Ben, can you go to your configuration screen?
You bet. Oh,
There it is. The model ZHL, C, and gradient factor.
Should be set to 16. Yep, ZLC 16. These big numbers are hard. Let's take a look.
Which one should it be set on?
16C.
16 Charlie.
ZHL 16.
Yeah, ZHL.
So you do 5085.
5080. I changed it.
5080. All right, thank you.
Absolutely.
So it was supposed to be the ZHL C plus
16.
GF.
Yep. There we go. No elevation, acclimatization. All right. There we go. That got us significantly a lot closer to the other. So it's just calculating its algorithms. It built a little differently, but it's still within the same, within range. It's saying 55 minutes to our 61 minutes. So it's a lot closer. There's still something a little bit off, and I'll spot it in a little bit, but at least it gives you an idea now. This is how you build a quick dive plan while you're setting on the boat. You do not need internet connection for this. There you go. Easy enough. It's a nice little software. Like I said, I play with it and use it to back up what I'm doing and make sure that if I need to make a change on the boat, I've got something with me. But I prefer to use subsurface overall because I find it to be more accurate and tends to run on a little bit more on the safer side. So that's my overall preference. But they're both going to get you safe, and they're both going to do a nice job for you. So easy enough. That's how you use both of them. This will be the dive plan that we're going to build and use on Saturday or Friday. I mean, you're welcome to copy that down, or I'll for you guys, Peyton and you guys, what I will do is I will print that off in the morning and hand it to you so you can have your slates prepared for Saturday or Friday. I mean, and you will use the same dive. Saturday.
Sounds good.
But our goal will be we're going to go down to about 80 feet on 75 feet on dive 1. We're going to putz along for about 30 minutes, and we're going to come up 70 feet. And I'm going to see you guys hang at 70 feet for a minute, and go ahead and make that first Deco switch. I want to see you guys come up to 40 feet, communicate to each other, and you're going to stay there for about a minute or 2 minutes. And then you're going to come up to 30 feet. You're going to stay there for 44 minutes. And then we're going to come up 20 feet, and I'm going to let you guys hang for 20 minutes or until I tell you to stop. If you guys do a really good job of it, we'll end our Deco stop early. We won't be anywhere near. But overall, I need to come up. Let's see if I stop sharing. Let's see. All right, there we go. I muted you guys. We were getting a lot of feedback on my side. So the symbol that I'm looking for you guys to do is 1, you're going to work together as a team. Let's see. The second one is when we get to that time to head up, you're going to, okay. Somebody should be launching their SMB with enough time before we get to the run time on that. The next thing I'm looking for you, once that SMB is up, you and me level up 70 feet. Okay, let's go. So I'm looking for you guys to communicate together. Come up to that 70 feet. Once you're at 70 feet, good to go. We're at Deco switch. You're going to reach over. You're going to find your tank. You're going to unbuckle it. You're going to pull it forward. You're going to look at it. You're going to look at your depth and make sure that that's the appropriate gas for the depth that you're at. Then you're going to look at me, or look at each other more accurately, and you're going to look at the other person's Deco blend, and you're going to say, okay, they're at 70 feet. We're at 70 feet. You're okay for Deco switch. Good to go. At that point, you're going to pull that regulator off. You're going to charge the cylinder, clear it, make sure it's good to go, and you're going to change your computer over. Now, I would encourage, before you do clear it, just give it a quick press to make sure that it works and everything's good to go. Nothing worse than putting a regulator in, trying to clear it, and it not work at all. So it's on, check, breathe, change. Always start your gas before you start the change on your watch. Makes sense? Make sure you're at the correct depth. Once you guys are both at that point, simple enough, you can just reach that cylinder back, clip it off, and now we're at the hang. What we're looking for at the next point is, once we hit that 33 minutes, need you to level up to 40 feet. Good. Let's go. You guys are going to go ahead and wind up that SMB till you get to that 40-foot mark. We're going to hang. Once we get to 40 feet, you're going to level off. And we're going to hang there for 2 minutes. Once we, at that 36-minute mark, sorry, those numbers are small. We're going to level up to 20 feet. Good to go. We're going to go. We're going to go up to that 20 feet, and we're going to hang there for 20 minutes. It's all good to go. Once we get done with 20 minutes, you're going to say, good to go, and you're going to give the clear. Clear. Both computers need to clear, not just one, but both. We want to make sure we'll take a look at it. Clear, clear, good to go. And then we can say 3-minute safety stop. Good to go, and hang out. Once we get done with a 3-minute safety stop, we're going to clear, head up. We're going to head up slow. We don't become a Triton missile at this point. Wind it up, wind it up, wind it up. One of the cool things, if you're using a spool, here's a quick tip for you. Grab a hold of the spool, grab about 2 to 3 feet out of the line, and wind it up. And grab another 2 to 3 feet out and wind it up. That'll keep you a nice slow ascent rate. You can also watch your computer at that point. Watch that GF99, make sure it's not going crazy. If you're winding, wind at a pace. You're not trying to reel in a marlin here, right? Right? Just wind it at a comfortable pace. Get that wind and get that nice slow ascent rate till you get to that level. A good pro tip for you is if you're on a reel or a spool, once you get to that level where you're supposed to be, if you're at 40 feet, wind at that point where the line is taut, but not overly tight. If it starts getting really tense, then you know you've descended in the water column. If it starts getting really light, you've ascended too high. It's a nice, easy way that you can tighten it up and it can become a guide so you don't have to continue watch the watch, right? You can relax and hold on to that. Obviously, absolutely, you want to keep an eye on the time and your depth, but it doesn't become as hard a tension point. You can use your line as your guiding point. I can tell you, Nikki's really slick. She likes to go through on her line, and every 10 feet, she has a mark on her line. And people do that all the time. It's great. She's got, for her 100 feet, it's got 10 little marks on it. For her 90 feet, guess what? It's got 9 little marks on it. For her 80 feet, it's got 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. So she can look at her line and she knows about how deep she is based upon her line. So if something were to go wrong with her computer, she can take a look at it and she knows about what depth she is based upon her line. It's kind of a cool thing. I don't do that, but I do know other people that do that. But it's definitely not a bad idea. So something cool you can do. Make sense? Cool. All right, let's go around the room. What did we learn? Anything good?
I really liked the visual of having the Deco table. It really kind of gave me a different perspective of what it's really like to level up in the water that I didn't have before. So that was great for me.
Awesome. What, Victoria, what's something I can explain that help you make this easier for you?
I think just what is your baseline settings? If you were just gonna, jump in, do 150 foot, or the plan that we made, is that kind of your base GF high-low, your base?
It is. Yep. My base settings are either 50-85 or 50-80, depend upon a lot of factors. If I'm tired, if I haven't slept well, if I'm a little dehydrated, it's always 80. If I'm having a good day, I'm feeling really good, I know that's going to be my only dive of the day. I know it's going to be easy dive because there's a light current. It's not going to go crazy. I'll move the net level up to 85 and I'll push my limit a little bit. But that's 85 is my hard max. I won't go above 85. But I know if it's an easy day, easy dive, that 85 is fine. And if something changes, and I've had that happen where I've gotten in, and all of a sudden I was diving the Mullifin one time, and we thought it was going to be a wonderful, easy day. The current was light. The seas were about 6 inches. It was awesome. Glassy day out there. I was like, oh, this is awesome. I jumped in. We got down to about 160 feet, and the current was crazy, and the visibility was gone. And if I hadn't had my hand in front of me, I would have found the Mullifin with my face. So I realized very quickly that, oh, this would be a good time to be a little bit more conservative. So I shortened up my plan based upon the craziness of what I found. So don't be afraid to make a change and go more conservative if you need to.
When you say you changed it up, you just changed your length of bottom time, or what did you change?
I shortened my length of bottom time. Absolutely. So I didn't get it into nearly as much deco as I would have normally.
And then you still stuck with your same deco plan?
I did. Absolutely. So easy way to go. What else can I answer for you guys? Randy from Texas?
About how close does the Perdix follow what we just planned?
Pretty close. And I encourage you to, there is a dive planning software on not every dive computer, but on your Perdix and your Peregrine. Go through and play with it. It's absolutely is a nice little dive planner, and it's a quick way that you can go through and take a look at it. So go into your dive planner on your Perdix and play with it. Compare it, see how it compares. But you'll find it's pretty consistent. They're all using the same algorithm, but it is interesting that every dive computer will be a little different on how it handles everything. but based upon their sensor meters, their pressure meters, and how the developer was feeling that day. Just kidding. I don't know about that last one. That was just me being funny. Peyton, how about you?
Just hearing you go over some of the in-water stuff for me is helpful, and look forward to getting the reps on that.
Right on.
So we're gonna work that choreography tomorrow on the water.
Cool.
When do you want that SMB popped?
Before you start heading,
Before the first, so when you're at your deepest and you're going to start your ascent, you pop it from that lowest depth.
correct.
Okay. Yeah,
And here's the that's a good question. Odd. So we get a lot of feedback. There we go. So when do you launch your SMB was a great question. And so the first thing I encourage you is, if you know your run time to leave the bottom is at 29 minutes, and you know it takes that you might be a little nervous or might be having a hard time, get your stuff ready ahead of time. You can pull your stuff at 24 minutes, 22 minutes, whatever, and you can have it clipped and ready to go. So all you have to do is pull it out and launch it. If you know it might take you a second or two to launch that SMB, that it might take you 2 minutes, go ahead and give yourself 3 or 4 minutes to launch that SMB. There's nothing wrong with launching your SMB early, but you want to launch your SMB from depth before you start your ascent. Here's why. What we find, especially diving current in South Florida, is if you have a 2-knot current and you have 25 minutes of deco or 30 minutes of deco, well, a 2-knot current for 30 minutes means a mile. So it means that from the time you leave the bottom to the time you hit the surface, you will have traveled over a mile. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I am really fond of getting back on the boat after a dive. You want to give the captain every opportunity to know exactly where you are. So when you leave, he'll see that SMB, or he'll have had time to find that SMB, right? And even if he has to leave you, he can always mark your last known position, get to somebody else real quick, and still come back to you, and he'll have a better idea. But at least it gives you the time to communicate with the captain. It says, hey, I'm here. I'm moving. I'm going to move probably a mile or mile and a half or 2 miles, depending on how long I'm deco and how fast the current is. And he'll know about where to find you. It becomes significantly easier. In West Palm Beach, I encourage that everybody use at least a 6-foot SMB. 6 foot is about the most accurate, best. I do have a friend that uses a 10-footer. I think that's a little overkill, but man, you can see that guy from a long distance. So I have very little to say that it's not a bad idea either. And so a nice 6-foot SMB. We also tend to avoid yellow SMBs because they're harder to see. Pink and orange are the easiest to see in Florida waters, and they're the ones that make the captains the happiest. I use a yellow SMB as an emergency because it's out of the ordinary for the SMBs we see around here, and the captain knows that if he sees my bright yellow SMB, that there's a problem. So that's my reasoning why I have an emergency yellow SMB. It's my oh shit SMB, that if there's a problem, that's why. But that's why we launch it at depth. So don't be afraid to launch early. And it's not a big deal. Once you get that launched and it's up, if you still have a few more minutes of run time at the bottom, use them. Not a problem. You can be Mary Poppins and carry that SMB around for a little bit. It's not going to hurt you. And then wind it up. Make sure that you're not letting that SMB just run like a marlin on a hook. We want to make sure to try and keep it taut. But we also make sure that the rule of thumb with SMB or with spools or reels is that we're carrying about 1.5 times the length of our deepest point on that reel. And the reason being is if you're getting it a current, that SMB will run and it can create an angle. It's not going to go straight up to the surface. So if you're diving 150 feet and you have 150 feet of line, that SMB it's either going to not make it to the surface or it's going to drag you to the surface, and neither one of those is a good option. So 1.5 times the length for this course. The minimum length is 200 feet for the amount of line. I do keep 200-foot SMB or reels in stock on the wall. So you're welcome to pick one up for me or whatever. I certainly buy gear for me. I'd prefer that, but you do you, and I'm not going to force anybody to do something they don't want to do. So easy enough. But does that Peyton, Matt, does that answer your question?
Yeah, good to go. Yep.
Awesome. Good. Randy.
I don't have a whole lot of questions, I guess. I've been looking at that multi-deco and it's a little confusing on the settings. I'll keep playing with it over, and I'm sure I'll see you on a regular basis. So I'm sure I'll have some questions.
Bring it in.
Right
now. Yeah, you were in the shop today. Why didn't you just, hey, Ben, I'm having a hard time with multi-deco.
Well, I came to you with a problem today and we sorted that out, but it's just, part of it's the system on the phone, like, and maybe I'm having the same problem that you just were, where like if I pull up one of the numbers, it's just all zeros because there must be, I have my numbers set larger also. You know, we're young, so our eyes are worse, so we set the sizes a little bigger, but so I'm not able to see the numbers to set things where I need to set them at, and so it's going to take some playing around to sort it out, but I'm sure once I do, I'll have to be checking with you to make sure that's right.
Got you covered anytime.
Subsurface looks a lot easier to use. I've downloaded that, and it looks you know, obviously dialing in some settings there for myself also. And then on the Paradex, I've been playing with that too, and so just sorting out my numbers between my sack rate, and of course the Paradex wants your RMV, so getting those numbers set right.
Gotcha. And we'll go through that as well. There's a bunch of stuff I can help you with in shop, and I'm happy to do that. And guys, I'm always happy to do the one-on-one with you guys to make sure you've got this and understand it. We went through a lot, guys. Has everybody felt like they've gotten something out of this?
Yeah,
definitely.
Good. There is more stuff there is more classroom that I will go through with you guys, but I like to do that the rest of what we go through in person and work with you individually. There's awesome time between dives. We get to talk and answer questions. I will absolutely do things that hopefully will create questions for you. So there is more stuff we're going to talk about. It's not just diving from this point out. Our overall goal is to make sure that you get as much information as possible. Again, the expectation for the dives are pretty simple. Dives 1 and 2, 75 feet. I want to prove that you can do the basic skills. Dives 3 and 4, 100 to 110 feet in that area. Again, we're getting a little deeper, adding a little bit more risk to the overall equation. I want to prove that you can do the skills. Dive number 5 is the big deal dive. That's the goal, is to if we go out and do a dive 5, it's because you passed the first 4 dives, and I'm proud of you, and we're excited. Dive number 5, we'll shoot for 130 to 140 feet in that area. 25, 30 minutes. We'll build up some deco. It'll be just like dives 1 through 4, just deeper. That's all it really is. It's just you've proven that you can handle the skills, and we're good to go. So that is my goal, is to graduate you guys on dive number 5, so that dive number 6, I can take you out and I can play some fun games to try and rearrange the tinsel and just give you some best practices that will increase your comfort and enjoyment of the sport. That's really what the goal of dive number 6 is give you those little things that take you to that next level. Couple of housekeeping things. I don't allow cameras on training dives. Every once in a while I'll bring a 360, but I'll strap it to my tank so it's completely out of the way and I forget about it. But I cannot allow you guys to bring cameras with you on our dives. And as cool as it would be to get pictures of you guys in twin sets so you can send it off to your girlfriends, wives, or both, may they never meet. I unfortunately am not able to do that. If everything works out well, I sometimes will grab a camera for dive number 6 and I'll get some cool pictures of you, but it's pretty infrequent that I do that. So just heads up on that. Other than that, the crew is excited to have you guys. They know that there's tech divers coming to the boat this week, next week, the week after, the week after that, the week after that. They have fun, and I have a fantastic crew. So plan on having fun. There are snacks and water on the boat and soda pops. So if there's something more that you would like other than soda, Capri Sun, chips, nuts, Cheetos, and crackers. Please bring that along. You're welcome to. The ocean is for this weekend is looking pretty good. In fact, I'll pull up the latest. It is Florida, so if you don't like the weather today, just wait 5 minutes. It'll change. This weekend we are looking at, and if you're curious on what app I use an app called Windy. It's the one that most of us use out here. And right now, let's see, waves. I haven't looked at this in a few days. For Friday, nice. We're looking, oh, this is beautiful. We're looking at Friday, 2 feet at 4 seconds. If you don't know what that means that the wave height from mid to high is going to be 2 feet, and the distance between peaks is going to be 4 seconds. And that's a great day. I am very happy with that. Saturday, it looks like we're rinsing and repeating with another 2 foot at 4 seconds. That is awesome. It's great dream diving. Sunday afternoon, we are picking up. We are looking at 4 feet at 4 seconds. So that's definitely a faster day. So it's going to be a little rougher. If you are prone to seasickness, I would encourage taking a couple Dramamines the night before, a couple Dramamine in the morning, and one before you get on the boat. So that it definitely will be a little on the rougher side, but it's definitely 4 feet at 4 seconds is definitely doable. No problem. We are going to, for those drops on Sunday, we're going to do a little differently. They're going to drop us out on the reef, and then they're going to drop everybody else. So we will have our own, we'll be on to the east of the reef, and we'll have a little fun. We'll see a lot of sand. We'll definitely see some triggerfish. The last time I did this, that location, oh, I love this. We dropped in at 135, 140, and my diver that I was teaching dropped in on a porcupine fish's nest. I'm assuming, because this little fat porcupine fish, it was like this little like a goonie. He was just this fat little booger. He kept coming over and he kept bouncing off like he was trying to get in a fight with my diver. It was hilarious. I'd never seen anything quite like it. And he moved over, and the porcupine fish came over, and it was like this little fat 5-year-old trying to get a fight with an adult. It was hilarious. And so I went over and we started moving away, and then he started pecking at me. I was like, "What are you doing, dude?" It was hilarious. So kind of a fun area. I like the sand more than I like the reef sometimes, because there's just interesting things out there. And I'll try and point some cool things out as well, because I figure you guys didn't come out and go in the ocean to see nothing. So fair enough.
Yeah, sounds good. Looking forward to it.
Cool. Yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Any other questions? Going once. Randy from Texas. We're in Texas.
Austin.
Okay. My uncle lived in Houston until he passed. His corporation is still in existence and still based in Tomball. So.
Is it oil? A lot of oil out in Houston.
No, not at all. Very interesting business. He started International Cooperation for Entrepreneurial Development, and they own about 8 or 10 different franchise organizations.
Wow.
So Quick Copy being one of them. You may have heard of that one. But yeah, wonderful place. Anything else? Randy, IBM?
I think we lost him a while ago.
Oh, did we? Okay, he probably fell asleep. I'll make fun of him tomorrow. Randy Beckman, anything else?
I don't think so. No, everything's good, and I'll talk to you before then. I'll see you on Friday.
Awesome. Guys, I appreciate you all. Victoria, last question.
All set. No, good to go. You answered them all for now.
Good. I will interact with you tomorrow. Give me a call, or I'll give you a call, and I've got a couple things to talk to you about.
Sounds good.
Awesome. I appreciate you guys. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, please feel free to let me know, and I will send you the notes tomorrow, if that works for you guys.
Sounds good.
Easy enough. I appreciate you guys. Thanks.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
Have a good one.
Thanks, Ben.